Welcome to Sloppy Spoilers with your host, DT2. What's up, y'all? DT2 Comics Chat here. Welcome to another episode of Sloppy Spoilers. In this episode, we're continuing our review of the Alien series, and we're going to be talking about Alien versus Predator Requiem, or Alien versus Predator 2, or Alien versus Predator. Why am I still watching this? I'd like to welcome my co-host to the show. Welcome to David Nemesis Howard. What's up, Dave?
Hey, what's going on? So I watched this show for the first time today, and I am poor for it in a lot of ways. So I got a lot to say about this movie. Wow. Woof. That's all I'm going to say.
Wow. Welcome to Steve, Shade Wing Sellers. What's going on, Steve?
Well, I have to say that Requiem is the perfect title because this movie is Requiem and pace for the entire Alien franchise and probably for Predator as well. This movie was terrible.
We tried to tell y'all that Alien 3 was the signal, but they kept making them anyway. Welcome to Jeff, Dr. Fate Bracey.
Hello out there in TV land, be it internet or otherwise, and I'm going to go completely against the grain by telling you I like this movie. Dun, dun,
okay,
dun,
dun. We're going to take a deep dive. Don't worry. Every franchise, unless the only exceptions are franchises that are controlled tightly, completely by the same showrunner or director from beginning to end, like Mad Men or more specifically Breaking Bad. Those are always the exception and not the rule. But when you have someone that conceived the show and they're the showrunner and they stay on from beginning to end, you at least have, most of the time, a more cohesive through line. That's obviously harder with movies, okay? Unless you do like Peter Jackson in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which I recommend for a whole lot of these things. I wish they shot them all at once. Just sequester the actors and just shoot until you have 3 movies. And then release them, whatever, but then there doesn't have to be that much of a time gap, and the actors are going to look the same, and you'll feel an organic texture in the films if you shoot them that way. But of course, that's the exception and not the rule. So by the time we get to this film, it's actually very hard to describe what it's become. It's like a parody of a parody. It's like a bad SNL skit. It's like, let's throw every stereotype under the sun, every trope that we've ever known, you know, from the angry, or not the angry, the horny arguing high school kids to Diet Ripley to, you know, the generic Marines to just everything about it was like, there's not one original idea in this film, even the idea of the Predator cleaner, which we're going to get into because that was the only part that I liked. But even that didn't make any sense. And the reason I brought up the thing about a through line is because when you stack Alien versus Predator Requiem, it makes literally no sense. No sense. You can't have both of those stories in the same universe. You would have had to have picked one. So I'll explain what I mean by that, but we're going to start off like we normally do with some first impressions. My first impressions of this film were, if I could sum it up in one word, I would have to say it was unnecessary. Everything I saw in the film, I was just like, it was not necessary. Did we learn anything new? And then there's this one really gross, disgusting scene, which we're going to talk about, which is pretty much kind of the thing you remember this movie for. Once you see this movie, you're going to remember the one scene right in the middle that just is not necessary. And by the time you get to movie's end, you have to ask yourself, what have we learned? What's changed? What's different? You know, it's just not necessary. And so, you know, it's one of those, we really wish they had quit while they were, quote unquote, ahead, but that was Aliens and the first Predator. They should have quit there. But anyway, so, you know, another thing I'll say about this movie is it is dark in every sense of the word. It's got a dark script, but it's lit so poorly and I know we're going to talk about that, until half the time you can't even see what's going on. And I guess it was trying to have some dark comedy, I guess. I don't know. But it's just not necessary. It's just not on no level. It's just like a character in a story. If you can take the character out and it's the same story, that character is extraneous. Okay. Good writing will have the characters serving a purpose and a function, a reason for them to be there. Okay. There's no reason for this movie to exist, and there's no reason for anybody in it to be there. And, so I want to hear from my co-hosts. So let me hear your thoughts, your first initial thoughts on watching this film. Some of us have seen it many times. Some of us, this was our first viewing for the review. So it's going to be interesting. So let me hear what you have to say, Nemesis. First impressions.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on these movies tying together. My real problem now that we've gotten it, let's see, how many movies are we in now? We're 6 movies in. So you had the first movie, Aliens, which was a horror movie, a sci-fi horror, kind of groundbreaking. Then James Cameron changes it up and makes it into a war movie or an action war movie type thing. Really good. Does a great job. Different genre. Okay. Then we have Aliens 3, and it becomes some sort of postmodern dystopian thing. And it's like, okay. Alien 4 then comes in and tries to do the Blade Runner, whatever thing. And then we have AVP, which is a video game movie. And now this is basically, Steve Shadwig and I were talking about this. I was like, they're at Camp Crystal Lake. This is Freddy versus Jason with aliens and predators, and it really felt like that. So it's like, that's part of what's really off-putting to me, is like every movie in the franchise has been a different genre. Every single one, to the point where this movie, we had everything that a slasher flick has. We had the female character who's a bad girl who takes her clothes off and ends up dying because of it, because she broke that rule. We've got all the teenage angst, which I hate. On the top of Crystal Lake, we had to throw in like Melrose Place or Dawson's Creek or something into it. I was waiting for it to hear and then so you got all that going on. Then every time the xenomorph makes a kill, they come up behind somebody and pose, for the screen, for the zoom shot in. And the person turns around and they're looking at him like, no scream or anything, waiting to just get slaughtered. I was like, put a hockey mask on the xenomorph and it's Jason, So I'm like, it was just, there were so many things. And that was just the genre. And then the little continuity things. There were tons of little mistakes. Obviously, this movie was not written, and we could get into those things, military things that were kind of crazy, and it just made no sense. But and the cleaner, the mafia predator guy, he wasn't acting consistently through the whole movie. So he's like he's burning and putting acid on people one time, and then he's putting a skinned body up in a tree the next time. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? I thought you were trying to keep it on the down low, but now you're skinning people, putting them up in the tree. What is that about? So yeah, it's just, I was very confused. And this was the first time I've watched it. And I do remember that I think I tried to watch it a while ago, and I got through 5 minutes and I skipped to the end and then turned it off, which is never a good sign. So
we're going to talk about Mafia Cleaner Predator, because that was the only part that I liked, but he was still inconsistent. Go ahead, Bracey, your first impressions.
Yes, indeed. This is a guilty pleasure for me. I love this movie. And maybe I love it because of AVP 1. If there was no Alien versus Predator, might have been a different opinion, but my expectations were so ruined by that film that I love this movie. This movie for me is Godzilla versus Kong. This is Dog Soldiers. This is, well, actually Dog Soldiers is a bit smarter. This is Van Helsing. These are all the great monster fight movies that I always loved as a kid. I'm willing to ignore the human characters who don't matter because they've written them so that they don't matter. I'm willing to ignore the inconsistencies in the characteristics, even amongst by the way, the cleaner predator is called the Wolf. Named so after Harvey Keitel's character in Pulp Fiction. I'm able to ignore the Wolf's incongruous actions. just because I'm just having a good time after that last film, which was had some cool ideas, but it was very dissatisfying to me. And then when you add it up between Alien 3, Alien Resurrection, AVP, I get this movie, and I'm like, yeah, at least now I'm finally getting something I want. This movie gets back to the roots of being a horror. Camp Crystal Lake is very appropriate because this is a slasher movie now, but it's also kind of a zombie movie because you've got a horde of enemies coming in. The director of this film hated the way that the previous movie was too well lit, too many static camera shots. He wanted to go for that more documentary style, like handheld cameras, dark, definitely too dark in some places because there's action I would have preferred to have seen better. But I like the fact that this movie had the balls and the teeth to get dirty and nasty, even with these characters that you don't really care about that much. Yeah, like this movie's killing kids, it's killing infants, it's killing pregnant women, it's killing people that you think for sure by like the algorithms of like a Hollywood script are going to make it. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm totally in. This movie is horribly, horribly flawed, but I am in it. Let's keep going.
But they didn't kill the dog.
They didn't kill the dog. I have an answer. I have an answer to you. The reason why everybody kept their mouth open is because in space no one can hear you. Oh wait, we're on Earth again. Never mind.
Yeah.
Well, you can have a cracked tooth and you need a root canal and somebody punches you in the jaw. You can feel better, but that doesn't mean it's a good day. I'm just saying.
This movie is the kind of absurd fun for me that a movie like Crank is.
Okay.
We'll give
you the guilty pleasure points because you're not going to convince us. But anyway, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I don't think that this was a good movie at all either. But I have some sympathy with what Jeff is saying, only in the sense that I hated every single human character within the first 10 to 15 minutes of this movie. And so there is a certain pleasure in watching these characters that I can't stand being brutally slaughtered by the aliens and the Predator. That I will give it. Then that's as far as I'm willing to go. Oh yeah, and the Predator is like the most likable character in the movie, as inconsistently as he's written. That is about the only thing that I'm going to give it. Everything else is terrible for reasons that we already kind of went into with Nemesis, because we did talk about like all of this, and it is a slasher movie. I mean, I was looking at them like you could take out the Alien and the Predator, replace it with Freddy and Jason, and what would have changed? Almost nothing. Absolutely nothing. And when you have that situation, yeah, you're getting back to what DT is saying, which is that it's pointless. This movie is completely pointless because it is a situation where it is a stock movie with stock villains, stock heroes, stock characters that are there to be slaughtered. And there's nothing. And the one thing that kind of sets it apart is what makes me revolted at this movie, which is the kids getting slaughtered in the hospital. I was just sort of like, what is this? And so you have you
part of what makes this epic.
or horrible, depending on how you look at it. But I was just going like with Steve Carell and that one meme, like, no, God, no.
I am relieved that my dark crown of darkness gets to go to somebody else for this podcast.
He writes horror, ladies and gentlemen, and he is revolted by this. Yeah. I want to tell you how awful they went with this movie. So yeah, but I mean, at the same time,
I would have liked this movie better if they had just owned up to the fact that they were copying Jason versus Freddy, which came out a few years before this. And at some point when the alien Predator came on the screen, it was like, kill.
No, we'll talk about this some more because we're going to do a comparison. We're going to do a creature comparison. But the one interesting idea that they had, and they do the most ridiculously obscene thing with it possible. But we'll get there. Okay, so where I'm going to go next is, because it's great when we disagree. This is going to be a good one. Where I'm going to go next is, I'm looking at the things that the movie asks us to believe. So Steve said he didn't like any humans inside the 5-minute window. For me, the 5-minute window has got to be establishing your premise. What are you asking me to believe? What are the parameters of the story world? If you don't get me then, then, now my guilty pleasure movie that I like the way Bracey likes this is Rain of Fire.
Oh,
Rain of Fire is awful. Everything about that movie is wrong, and I love it. So I can relate because you have to shut your brain off because nothing makes any sense, but I love it anyway. So that's what I'm saying. I get that. I just don't feel that way about this.
Manos the Hands of Fate for me. It's the same thing.
So everybody's got that film where you know as a writer and you know as a fan it's nonsensical, but something about it just does it for you. I get that.
Real Men with Jim Belushi. That's mine.
Oh, that movie's awesome though.
Yeah, it is.
But in this film, and the Predator that got chest bursted, his name is Scar because they couldn't come with anything more original, so they called him Scar. But okay, so we meet the Predalien larva at the end of the last film. This movie, the first thing it asks us to believe is that a race of hunters that have been around for umpteen of Google years that go from planet to planet, that have a trophy room in their ship, that are basically Klingons on steroids, that have so many different kind of skulls and species that we don't even recognize them all, that race would know what to do with suddenly Susan Predalien. Really? And all of a sudden, he just takes everybody out because he's just so fast, or they, they can't use their cannons right, or whatever you're trying to say, the amp fail. Okay, if you wanted to set it the way you said it, meaning an Earth environment, the thing to do would have been to have that thing jump out the window and have it fall to Earth. And we see it burn up on re-entry and it survives. Then we know how tough it is. Then they have a reason to say, this thing got away from us. We got to go down there and stop it because we don't know what's going to happen. That changes everything from what we saw. But what we saw was some of the most fearsome hunters in the galaxy, where all they do is hunt. Now, let me tell you something. It's like being the kicker on an NFL team. You ain't got but one job. You kick the kickoffs, you kick the extra points, you kick the punt returns, you kick the field goals, and they can't tackle you. That's why you can have a career until your 40s. You ain't got but one job, this right here. When you are a race of hunters and all you do, remember, you set up a pyramid. You have laser technology that can blow a hole into the center of the Earth from the sky. And will just boop, just like that. Superman's heat vision can't even do that, but you got a laser that's so strong until you can go from the outer epidermis of the Earth to the center of the Earth just with a shot. And it's smooth and it's big. And then you got all these 3D kind of maps, this kind of Tony Stark hologram technology. And then people are hitting the little bricks, and then you swooping out the sky because you love to hunt. And you showed us in the last movie that in the ancient Egyptian, Mayas, Aztecian, Indian culture that y'all invented, there was thousands of aliens. And sometimes you beat them all with a handful of predators. Now, all of a sudden, here come Dr. Dreadlock Alien, and y'all can't beat him. Fail. The movie lost me in the first 5 minutes. Like, you have failed this city. Fail, you are a failure. But I'm like, no. He should have jumped out the window while you're in space. You maybe weren't aware of what was going on, or maybe your weight sensors went off because you have several layers of vision. You got infrared, ultraviolet, obsidian, blinding light, whatever. So he knows that because he's part you, jumps out the window, catches on fire, survives the reentry. Then you say, we have to go get him. That I buy. This, okay? So you lost me. And then on top of that, then after all that, you want me to believe that one of y'all can come down here and just take out all the aliens and all the facehuggers. Nope. So I want to hear you guys' thoughts on, did you buy the premise? Like, how did you get past all of that? In the first 5 minutes, and the movie's asking you to believe all that with these creatures that we've been following for years now. How did you cognitively deal with what the movie was asking you to deal with? Start with Steve. You notice everybody got the even laugh today. That's how bad this movie was. Everybody laughing.
I'm starting with laughter because this is the actual reaction I'm having, with this whole idea. Nothing makes sense. Nothing. The premise from the last movie made no sense because, as we established before, there is no way that no one would have noticed that this thing had an alien baby in it. There is no way. Well, they established they have the ability to see alien babies. So just starting from that, it's like why they would leave him in there alone to gestate and not do anything to it, like not secure the body, not put things like that, any kind of precautions. Makes no sense. On top of that, we're seeing really horrible scientific experiments going on with alien face huggers and things like that. They put absolutely no thought into precautions for safety whatsoever, to contain these things. And so, yeah, these things suddenly jump out and, and they're just written as completely stupid. No precautions as to, making sure that these aliens, these xenomorphs don't take control of the ship or cause a crash, nothing like that. No precautions to jettison the lab area, into the sun if something happens, anything. If they had suddenly managed to get out, go in re-entry and die on Earth, that would have been reasonable. I would have bought that. No, that's just dumb. And then the whole thing with the fact that, okay, we get a signal back to the Predator homeworld, signaling them of this, and the only response the Predators have is to send one guy. It's not like, a bunch of aliens, a bunch of Predators would be like maybe competing with each other or to take a squad because, wow, this is a pretty serious hunt. No, it's just one guy. No, there's no way the Predators would have done that. That is ridiculous from the jump. And then the crash of the ship. You have this fireball coming down from the sky, which anyone would have seen if they looked up. Anybody would have seen this. Does anybody notice it? No. And on top of this, if you wanted to, conceal the fact that the ship had crashed, this is a ship with a cloaking device on it. Why are they not using the cloak? So the thing crashes on there, and you could still have had a pretty dramatic a crashing scene, with a cloaking ship as it comes out of cloak crashing down on the ground. There was no reason whatsoever. You have to have a huge fireball in the sky that anybody could have seen, and yet the only people who notice that the ship has crashed is the wolf predator. No, give me a break. This is dumb. Everything about it is stupid, and just I mean the whole thing is laughable and ridiculous. And I'll just leave it to the rest of you to piece this even further, because I'm sure that there are things that I didn't even get into. That's how stupid this is.
Steve said it's so stupid, I don't care about the rest.
Yep, basically.
Let me do Parker. Why didn't you freeze him? Why don't they just freeze him? Go ahead, Bracey.
Yeah, I can't really defend any of this, but I'm going to.
I wish you luck.
Because I'm going to be that guy today. Apparently predators don't do the hyper sleep. I guess they got the hyper drive, so they don't even worry about that kind of thing. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense from a writing perspective. Obviously, they're ignoring all kinds of stuff for this film. But I guess they figured after the last film, why not keep up the trend? We've already established that for some reason, these aliens are hyper growers beyond anything we've ever seen before. And this Pred alien goes even beyond that, because he goes from like popping out of the chest to full grown monster, I'm going to eat your face mode in a scene. Now, not to mention this fact that, like, shouldn't these guys have already been like warping out on their way home by now? Like, why are they still hanging out in orbit around the planet? There's no reason for that. This one guy can be like skinning the alien on the way home. I don't know. That's kind of a weird thing. I do buy the Pred alien being able to slaughter everything on the ship, because this thing is clearly like boss level beyond anything alien we've seen, except perhaps a queen. And we get a chance to talk about this later. I'll talk about my own theory that this is actually an alien king. And I even contacted the FX people about this and argued that point. And they were like, you might be on to something. So we'll get into that later, I'm sure. So this thing is way more powerful. Like later on, we'll see it just punch its way right up through a street. So it's going through concrete pipes, asphalt, all kinds of stuff. So I believe that this thing can fully decimate a bunch of predators in some tight quarters on its own. I do have a problem with even with a predator having like an old crap moment, start lancing out with a plasma caster inside of his ship. That's not going to cause a problem in space. He should have gone in there with handheld weapons, net slingers, spears, something. To your point about the cloaking device, even if you're invisible, you fall through the sky, you're going to leave a vapor trail as your ship, is impacting on the atmosphere. I'm going to contrapasto on that one. There are a lot of things that should not be ignored. Like, yep, that's going to get seen by everything later on when they implode the ship. Why did nobody see that from town? Like, even if it's not a nuclear explosion later, it's an implosion. That still put off a lot of light. People should have seen that. I think, and again, I'm having to do the work of the movie, which is never a good thing. I think there is a relationship between the predator that sent the signal back home and the wolf predator, the cleaner, because it went directly to his palace. So, maybe this guy was a hunt master, maybe this was one of his progeny, something like that. And, it's like, oh, avenge my honor, my sire, that sort of thing. But again, this is me having to make stuff up. And this movie's so goofy, I'm just kind of happy to do it. Although I would say that as much as we talk about wanting to see an alien homeworld, this is the only movie where we get to see a predator homeworld. And man, I want to see some hunts on the predator homeworld. Let's see these guys do some things on their own. I think the idea of sending in a squad makes a lot more sense, but maybe it's a weird honor code thing. But how cool would it have been to do like the Schwarzenegger thing, where it's like an elite team of predators come down, and now they're hunting this super alien? That would have been a nice turnaround in the whole predator thing.
That would have been a better movie than what we saw.
It would have been
a better predators movie. Have one of the Bic shavers doing the thing with the
he's like these laser shavers.
Okay, well, let me say
stuff like that. He's like, and you hear like, I ain't got no time to bleed.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things this film does do right. And another thing I noticed right away, because this was so annoying last time, is that they went back to the sound effects from previous movies. The aliens now sound like alien. They sound weirdly modulated and screechy and squeaky. The predator sounds like a predator when he roars. He has that basso reverberating roar. And I like the way they mix those two sounds into the pred alien when it starts screaming at things. So I'll keep talking about the things I really like in this. I'll let you guys do most of the trashing.
Okay, well, I want to be the first one to sign your cast, because I'm sure you broke your leg with all them leaps you just took. I'm sure your femur, your tibia, your fibula, your Saudi Arabia, I'm sure it shattered into 700 pieces with the leaps you had to take to make all that happen. But I'm proud of you because you're a creative kind of guy. I just want to throw out there that they captured a queen and put her on ice underneath a pyramid in some kind of chain thing. They captured a queen. How you going to capture a queen? And then you meet this thing. The aliens are supposed to be a hybrid of what they come out of. So if you want to add a predator strength and an alien strength, I can give you increased strength, but I can't give you strength so increased that half a dozen predators can't do nothing with you. You are at the disadvantage because they hunt from a distance in infrared. And all of a sudden, your camera just, you just enlarge your laser sight. So that's okay. We'll sign that cast because you done broke both your knees and your ankles with all them leads. But that's all.
Don't worry. I'm far from done.
Oh, okay. More leads coming. Okay, so we all gonna get to sign the cast. So we're gonna be attracted in a minute. Go ahead, Nemesis.
Yeah, Steve hit on a lot of it. I mean, my problem, I didn't buy it from the very beginning. I didn't buy the ending, and I didn't buy the fact that this thing hatched out of it, and then it took out all the people on the ship. If I get it that it's super strong and everything, there's supposed to be quite a few predators on there. There were ones that looked to be like senior ranking, and it kills everybody. Okay, so all of these things going on. As far as what you're saying about the sounds, it's interesting you say that. It's going to lead into my real pet peeve that nobody has touched on yet. They tried to get the original sounds from the original movies, from the original Predator and the original Alien. I happened to watch this movie and I had Amazon, so I put on all the little comments and everything. So it tried to get them, and they were degraded. They didn't have them. So they tried to recreate those sounds. But it was obvious they kept trying to go back and grab stuff from the old movies and try and use nostalgia for us. And one of the big problems I have is they went right to Aliens, the second movie, and got those species containers, those jars that just tip over, that are thin glass, the beakers, and put face huggers in there. By the way, and here's my real problem. That's silly in and of itself, because why the aliens who have been dealing with this species for a long time, why do they have them in these jars that could tip over and break and the things get out? But that's the point. According to the Alien versus Predator, the first movie, these aliens the Predators have been dealing with these aliens for thousands of years. Why in the world did they have face huggers up on the ship and doing experiments on them? I know why, because the plot needed it to be there so that the facehuggers get out and they can infect people. But it's like, that's the first thing I noticed when I was watching. I mean, I put aside my thoughts on the Pred Alien and about how it got on the ship and it was attacking. And then I see the dude sitting there doing this stuff. And my very first thought was, why do they even have facehuggers up there? And it's like, oh, now I know, because they're going to get loose and they're going to like attack everybody. But there was no reason for them to be there. And immediately I was out of it. And then from there, it just, once my mind gets in that mode, I start seeing everything that is just taking me out of the movie. I mean, and the very next thing was the signal. He sends a signal back to the Predator homeworld. How the hell faster than light is that signal going? Not to mention, then the dude gets in the ship and comes back. He popped in before the pizza even got cold. He arrived from the Predator. Yeah, he arrived from the Predator homeworld and beat Domino's there. I mean, there's even in Star Wars with
30 minutes or less.
Yeah, it takes some time to get there, you know. So it's the signal should take a little time to get there. It should take some time. I mean, by the time he got there, it should have been, you know, if we're going to give him really fast speed, like ludicrous speed, then he shows up when the National Guard's in there and the town's loose. And then maybe the movie would be worthwhile, because if we just watch, if that's where the movie started, where all hell has happened, and then the Predator shows up in the middle of a war zone, okay, maybe it would be okay. But no, that dude was there immediately. I'm like, where in the hell, how did this happen? So,
I respect this for being the antithesis of the previous film. And I think that was the director's whole idea when he talked about why he changed the cinematography and the shooting style. And the other movie took almost an hour to get going, and he's just pop, 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 pop. It really is like he's trying to make the anti-version of the previous movie.
But here's the thing, though. You brought that to my attention because my guilty pleasure is I do like to sit and turn my brain off and watch the first AVP, you know. But with this one, you know, you have brought in my mind that it took so long to get to the actual fight. So I'm watching it. Yeah, we got something at the very beginning, and then we got an episode or two of Dawson's Creek before we got back to it. So, you know, it's like, if you're going to give me some action at the beginning, that's fine. But then don't tease me and then make me sit through Melrose Place.
But you should know, as a writer, that is the perfect setup. That's one of the things I like to do with my stories or my films. The first thing I do is I gut punch the audience right away. Then they're willing to hang on through the boring stuff to get back into the cool stuff.
I write horror, but I have never been cruel enough to make somebody watch Melrose Place or Dawson Creek. That's all I'm going to say.
Now, something that combines what we're talking about, and Nemesis really hit on it inadvertently, and I'm just going to say it directly, because it's another thing that just my brain has got the 4-alarm fire going off. And here it is. I think this movie is asking us to believe that that's the first time there's been a Predalien. Now, you stack that against the fact that they've been fighting them for hundreds, thousands of years. That doesn't make any sense. That cannot possibly be the first time a predator got face hugged. Think about it. Cannot possibly be, which adds more credence to the idea that they would have seen this before. They would have known what something like this is. That can't be the first one in all of their encounters, because I'm going to repeat hundreds to thousands of aliens in one scene. No way in the world. You're trying to tell me those face huggers never attacked a predator before? No.
Now you are correct. In the script, that thing is called the Abomination. Now again, this is something you have to know outside the movie, which we all know is a bad thing. But that clearly shows there is a history. This has happened, and that's why the response to a pred alien is so aggressive.
Well, not only that, like I said, I watched the I don't want to give this company any more advertising. So I watched the company Shall Not Be Named. I watched their version with the little comments and everything. In the original script, the pred alien dies when the ship crashes. And the face huggers get out, and then it's just normal aliens there. So it's like, I don't even know how I feel about that. But I was just like, what?
It's definitely weird that they would have done that, because I read that too, and I was like, but you set up that in the last movie. Why would you not go there? I'm glad they did go there.
Yeah. So I was just confused when I read that. I was like, I'm not sure how I feel about this. So.
Well, we were talking before we were recording, and I made a comment about how once I've seen something at its peak, it's blessed and near impossible for me to take things that aren't at that level as seriously. And I was actually referencing Captain Marvel when I said that. But if you've read Earth Hive talks about what the aliens would do if they actually got here. And one of the things that they found out, because Weyland Yutani finds out the hard way, that the aliens are actually about 10 to 15 times smarter than they ever gave them credit for, and that on some level, they were playing possum. They were consciously behaving a certain way to make it look like they weren't any more than bugs on an anthill. Mm-hmm. When they got to Earth, what they started doing was they started hiding their eggs lower and lower underground. So when they saw that the humans, knew what was up with the eggs, they started hiding them. So now I want you to imagine just being out somewhere, just on the beach, and here comes a facehugger burrowing up from 10 feet under, because it sensed people, they started doing stuff like that because the humans started finding the eggs and destroying them. So they just started hiding them lower and lower, that kind of thing. So once I read something like that, I'm like, wow. So in Earth Hive, spoiler alert, this is sloppy spoilers, Earth gets overrun like that. It's one of those things where it's like the aliens get here, and then they take Chicago, then they take the Midwest, then they take the country in a month, then they take the planet in a quarter. It was like that. It's like they couldn't believe they just blinked, and these aliens are like, there's nowhere you can go now. And once I read that, I was like, wow. So when I see something like this, and you give me, half a dozen facehuggers, and the best they can do is just facehug a kid, or scurry into a town or whatever, it reduces their intelligence level. They're way, way smarter than they would have behaved there. And we already know, once again, from the films, like Jeff said, we shouldn't have to do the work. But even if we don't read extended universe material, we know from the films that the first thing they would do is establish a queen chamber. That's what they do. So, once again, I just couldn't get past it. I was just like, when you start shaking your head, I'm like, yeah, okay.
There is one thing that I would add about this first scene real quick, and I'm just going to throw this out there, and then hopefully we can, Jeff can comment on this. Is the design of the pred alien? I love me some practical effects and suits, but man, did that suit look clunky and cumbersome. And the part that really killed it for me was the legs. The legs made it look like this was a bad version of the Jersey Devil walking around. That's what it looked like. It really looked like it had hooves. I couldn't understand what was going on. I was like, why does the pred alien have hooves? It really looked, in my opinion, it looked really bad. It looked really bad. I mean, a lot of the other stuff looked okay, but I wasn't a big fan of, especially the bottom portion of the pred alien. I didn't think it looked good.
Yeah, it's something.
Well, it's one of those things that's probably. Go ahead, Bracey.
Give me a chance to discuss the pred alien and his biology and all that, and I can address all that in one go.
Okay, we'll get there in a minute. To me, it's one of those things that probably sounded cooler in concept than it was in execution, mainly because of the nature bioconstructure of both of the creatures, trying to merge that into something more scary. But we'll talk about that later on because we're going to compare monsters. So we'll get to that later. Okay. So the next thing, once we understand that they're going to kill kids and we understand what kind of movie we're looking at, that it's going to be kind of a gross out fest. The next part, in spite of all that we said, the only part that I did like was the absolute domination of the cleaner predator. But I had to turn my mind off to enjoy it because nothing about his existence makes any sense. Like all the stuff Nemesis said about how he's got trans-warp drive. He's got instant, I'm here. He's got that kind of thing. But also, you can't have it to where one predator is that powerful, because that negates the premise of the first movie. Why would they need 6-on-6 or 6-on-12 or whatever the ratios were if one predator can do that? I liked watching it, but I was like, y'all know this don't make no sense, right? So, and the other thing is, it was the same double-edged sword. The coolest thing was his blue cleaner liquid, whatever kind of acid or dissolve or solvent or substance that was, just to pour it on, because he was like purposely trying to, I guess, erase the tracks of the aliens on Earth, is what I'm assuming. But if that's the case, two things. First thing is what Nemesis said, why would you string people up then? Why would you skin them and let everybody know you're there? Because that's your signature move, dude. Why would you let everybody know that, number one? And number two, why didn't you use that liquid at any other time? If that liquid is that strong, that should have been, put in the capsule and used as some type of projectile weapon, because how are you going to beat it? Because I'm going to say again, anybody that plays video games or studies superheroes know, if you can strike from a distance, okay, that's why Batman uses so many gadgets. Wolverine has to be close up on you, but what he has is speed. He has the speed to get up close up on you faster than most people. But if you can negate that advantage, what can Wolverine do from a distance? Superman, however, can strike from the stratosphere. Go ahead, Nemesis.
I got a number 3 for you on that whole blue vial. What kind of volume bending physics exists on the Predator homeworld where there's like a quart of blue liquid in this little vial? I mean, he kept pouring it. It was the never-ending vial. It's straight out of D&D, the never-ending potion vial. Just kept pouring.
It's usually like TARDIS technology is bigger on the inside.
Yeah. I was watching that. I was like, I don't know maybe it was just because I was in that mind frame after the beginning, but as I watched the movie and he kept just pouring the blue liquid, I was like, did he go back for a refill? Did he have another one? And what is going on here?
No, it was definitely the never-ending vial. And also leads me to the other scene I thought was cool. It's one of those situations where, and Steve has said it before, there was maybe a good movie in here, maybe a good B movie, maybe a good whatever. But it's like the stuff that they should have pursued, they ignored. And then they did some other stuff that was just so dumb. You're like, really? The coolest shot for me was when you saw the little baby alien that was just past the chest burster stage, but wasn't fully grown. So it was like the size of a dog. And they caught a glimpse of it, the boys did, when they were in the sewer. And the dude was like, oh, it's just a rat. He's like, no, there ain't no rat. And because very rarely do we get to see the in-between stage between a chest burster and a full-grown thing. I thought that was really cool because I'm like, what can they do? Do they have to eat something to grow to be 8 feet tall? Like, do they just shed their skin? Like, if we saw maybe that stage, because we've never seen that before, because I like to see something new every time we get a different film. But again, they didn't pursue that. It was just that one quick shot. I was like, oh, wow. What's coming next? And then nothing comes of it. We have the old water fake out scene. So those were really kind of the only two things that I actually thought were cool, but I had to shut my brain off to enjoy even those because I'm like, And so give me your thoughts on the Mafia cleaner predator with a never-ending blue vial, because I did think it was a cool character, but I was like, this is so disproportionate to what we've seen. Disproportionate that one of y'all could do that. And then, like Nemesis said, not only the never-ending flow of the liquid, but I'm like, how much material can this thing dissolve? When you watch it pour and hit whatever it's hitting, it's a small puddle, but it takes out several feet of Alien. I'm like, how? So anyway, so give me your thoughts on the Mafia cleaner Predator. Start with Bracey because you like it.
Oh yeah.
I like this part too.
Now we do have some issues with this. Even somebody who's fanboying all over this film myself, I do have some issues with this. For the most part, I really love the wolf. I love seeing new Predator kit. I can never get enough new Predator kit because the Predators are like, Batman meets Kraven the Hunter. That's always kind of cool, seeing all their cool devices, even though they try to be minimalistic in a way because, they want a worthy hunt and all. But this guy has a very special mission. He's not on a hunt. He is a cleaner. So he seems to be more intent on removing evidence of aliens. He seems to realize that that humans know predators exist, even if they, the larger populace doesn't know. There have been enough times that they've lost us that they know, like, oh, we didn't get, Todd back, and Todd left some of his gear around. We know they've got evidence of us. So we got the cave paintings, we got the hieroglyphics, whatever. They know we're around. The blue goo, he had several vials put into this one larger container, which is what he seemed to pour out. So I guess he was rotating them. It's described as an enzyme, so it might be bacteriological, where it multiplies a bit. So what it does is when it hits something, it's not working like an acid. It's actually eating it like a bacteria. So that's how it can dispose of a great deal of material. And again, this is me doing the movie's job because I understand how these sort of things work because I'm a super nerd. But you shouldn't have to do it like it's like we've talked about in some other things before. Like if something does something and you don't understand the move, you're not giving context, then it just becomes magic. So for anybody who's not a super nerd, this is magic fluid. But I did love seeing all of his kit. I love the idea of him and the fact that he wasn't on a hunt, which made him utterly ruthless. Normally humans are off limits if they're not armed or if they're not posing some sort of aggressive threat. So I didn't mind him, like, for instance, killing the cop. Skinning the cop was dumb because that's a trophy thing. He's got no time for that. He's a mission. He should have just gutted the cop and left, let him worry about whatever the hell gutted the cop. If he's out there to destroy evidence of aliens, he should just be destroying evidence of aliens. He's not so worried about predator presence, I'm thinking. So I gotta like, no, you kind of messed up on that part, dude. But I did love seeing all the cool gear, the laser mines, him doing things we haven't seen from the first Predator movie. I love like seeing like the triangulation, the tracking of the beam was going across the screen as it's triangulating the presence of enemies. He kept switching between visual modes so he could keep up with the aliens. He has so many cool new weapons. He had the throwing stars from last film, but he has his razor whip. He's got his combi stick. Just all kinds of cool stuff. And like the first guy we've ever seen like double pump shoulder cannons. How awesome was that? That was about as cool as it gets. And I like the presentation that when we see his home, now this guy is obviously high status. He is in a building higher up than all the buildings around him in his particular Predator city. He has a wall full of weapons. He has a wall full of face masks. He's got trophies galore behind him, and he chooses a particular mask. And when we see this guy, we see he's not like he's definitely weathered. He doesn't look as ancient as the ancient Predator in Predator 2 that Danny Glover has to deal with at the end. But this guy has definitely hunted aliens before. His face has acid scars. He's missing a tusk. One eye is blind from an acid splash. And the mask he chooses has several claw grooves in it, whether it's from hunting aliens, and maybe that's why he chose this particular mask, because like, oh, my old foe, I'll put on this face to deal with you. So I like that whole aesthetic about this guy and the purposefulness of his mission. I just wish, like, if he was if he was going to be on the down low, like killing the cop didn't make sense. And like, again, I think he's just destroying evidence of aliens because he is not covert at all when it comes right down to it. He starts blasting things like crazy. He's knocking big holes in roads himself. He's blowing up stuff. He's not very subtle when he doesn't want to be, but at least he's maintaining a little bit of like the down low kind of presence. Overall, I like the Wolf a great deal, except for like really that kind of one bit. And I did like seeing some new tactics, like using humans to bait. You know, he uses himself for bait when that's all he's got, but later on he'll use a human as bait to draw out aliens. So there's like, I think this is really cool. We get a lot of really cool stuff, and I know you feel like this guy is like Super Predator, but I kind of think he is. This is like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando. This is Ethan Hunt. This is all. This guy is like a super high level top dog, just given like his status on the planet that we can see, his collection of gear, his collection of trophies, his collection of weapons. I think that's why this guy, you know, and again, I just kind of had to form my own connection between him and the guy. They call him in the script the bull alien, or the bull predator, sent the message back home to the wolf. So I still feel like it's a personal connection. And you notice, like when he encountered him, he put his hand on the bull's mask. So again, I feel like there's a deeper connection there. There's like, we've never really seen a predator express emotion outside of like, you know, roaring a challenge or anything like that. And he had like a quiet kind of moment, an actual requiem, if you will. So I think this is like a little bit professional, a little bit personal. So, but overall, other than making a few like, yeah, why are you doing this? You're on this mission. Don't bother skinning people or doing this kind of stuff. Mostly, I love this character quite a bit.
All right, I will give you points for details. I'll give you points on the level of detail that you have and the level of knowledge you have for his weapons array alone. So I'll give you points on that one. I can definitely give you that. I still think, as hard as we have to work, because if you don't work hard, you know, that stuff goes by really fast and in the dark. But I'll definitely give you points on that. Again, this is the only part of the film that I really, really like. It's just the idea of it needs more fleshing out. And it negates them having to hunt in groups of anything. Why would you need to hunt in groups of anything if one of y'all can do that? But anyway, go ahead, Steve. What did you think about the cool mafia cleaner predator?
Yeah, I think Jeff covered quite a few things that I would have. My general feeling about this character was that he was the one character from this movie I found tolerable. Most of the other ones were terrible. Most of the other characters were terrible, but the Wolf Predator was not too bad. Inconsistent in various ways, but overall not too bad. I will say though, I think that this particular predator is a predator with bat privilege, as we like to say. He has some Bat God tendencies at times.
Oh my goodness. I wish I could argue with that.
Bat Predator. That's what I was going to say. Bat Predator.
Yeah, you guys calling him Super Predator. He's definitely more Bat Predator. But I would say that but there are times when you really like it, and when he's really being clever and he's actually being better written than some of the other times, it's really a lot of fun. One of my favorite part was one of those that Jeff had mentioned towards the end, which is, you know, he's using humans as bait to trap the aliens. That's smart. I'm like, I can't argue with that. And not only did it end up killing like a character that I didn't like, well, I didn't like any of the humans, so it's like, okay, you know, the Predator wants to take out a few of these losers, go ahead, by all means do that. And it led to a really cool scene, so I'm like, I can't argue with that. Yeah, the acid, I kind of was wondering at first whether it was like based on alien blood, because you know that alien blood is highly acidic, and they've been studying these things for thousands of years probably. So it wouldn't surprise me if it's like, okay, let's study why this alien blood is so acidic, and we'll make some of our own that works on the aliens. So that I kind of like the idea of it. I mean, yeah, there was the whole thing with, okay, where are they getting all of this? Where is he storing all of this? How much does he have? Does he have more in his ship? I mean, all this sort of stuff is out there, but I did like the idea of this. Of course, it leads you to wonder why he didn't use any of that on the dead cop that he killed, or, you know, to try to use it, you know, on anything other than aliens. But okay, fine. We accept we has this. It's a neat idea. Okay, go with that. Yeah, and I will say though that there are other things that kind of got a little bit to me too, and that is they repeated the mistake of the original Alien versus Predator, and he takes his freaking helmet off a number of times in major situations. So he takes it off early on, you know, on the Predator ship, which is like, how do you know that there are no face huggers over there ready to jump you, and you're using this? So I will give it a little bit of a pass though, in that we can see that he was doing it so that he could get the recording of the other predators log. Which fine, but why can't you get that off of another computer? Why do you have to put your face at risk to do this?
Or just plug it right into the helmet while you're wearing it.
Yeah, something like that. So yeah, that was a little silly. But what really got me was like in the end fight with the Pred alien, where it's like, yeah, I'm going to go and just take off my helmet. No. and the Pred alien tries to hit him with the well, I guess I forget exactly what it's called, but basically the tongue prong thing that they all have. So it's like, okay, if it can do this, why are you putting your face at risk by taking off your helmet? You should be wearing it all the time, especially if you are an elite apex predator, which this guy definitely is. I mean, he should be really, really smart at all times. He should not be taking this thing off unless he has to. And that I thought was a mistake as well. So there are little inconsistencies about that. But overall, this was the only character I actually enjoyed watching, because, he gets to kill some of the characters I didn't like. He gets some great moments. He gets some great moments against some of the predators. He dies in badass fashion. I mean, he dies fighting the Pred alien. He's right there, grappling with the thing at the last. I mean, if you're going to go out, okay, go out like that. I don't have a problem with that. So yeah, I would say while this movie really doesn't work on so many levels, I gotta like this character. I would like to see more of that.
For anybody who wants to know, they typically call it the inner jaw, but if you want a scientific name for it, it's called a pharyngeal jaw, a jaw that can project out of the mouth.
Okay, I forget what it was called.
I call it disturbing. So
yeah.
Okay. So, I think Steve said kind of the same thing I was saying in different ways, but that was that there are tangential ideas that are surrounding this thing that would have been more fun to see. And they just hint at them. But if we could have expanded that world, maybe even sideways a little bit more, when you combine that with what Jeff said, I really like the idea of, because Bat Predator is right. We just see Batman grab weapons from his weapons arsenal. In this particular situation, it would have been much cooler to see him choosing and why. And if there was a history of cleaner predators, and like you said, why they chose this guy in particular, because there was some type of relationship. And, but like I said, I just can't get past the disproportional concept of one predator could do all that, because it just negates so much of what we've seen before. But it's still fun to watch. And also the thing about the mandibles and all the different kind of stuff is, I think those two, I don't know how to say it, those two face designs are scary individually and goofy combined. It's not more scary combined. You might think it would be more scary to have the large mandibles and the protruding tongue with teeth, but to me it felt, I don't know, it felt kind of goofy. It felt kind of, I don't know, like maybe a cartoonish type of thing, because I don't know, is this thing supposed to be a better hunter? Is it supposed to be stronger? Is it supposed to be scarier? Supposed to be smarter? What is it supposed to be? Because it's just more gross. That's pretty much all the movie said. But anyway, we'll definitely get there, because we obviously got a lot to say about that. So Nemesis, did I hear from you already, or we're still waiting to hear from you?
You're still waiting to hear from me.
Okay, go ahead.
I think you guys hit a lot of great points. I'm gonna hit a few. For me, this character is the good, the and the bad. The good, I love the concept. I agree with all of you. I think the concept is really cool. I like the weapons, just like Jeff said. The problem I have, and this leads into the bad, is that we've got all this new technology. The very nature of the Predator, we've never seen them really communicate as far as actually talk and explain things and everything like that. And that is what this movie needed. They show him so many times using so many new technologies. At one point, he's collecting like the fluid and putting in something to do a tracking. It's like we're all just supposed to go along with this. It's like, if you're doing sci-fi and you're doing something that's reliant on gadgets, we have to understand the gadgets and how they work to some extent. Otherwise, we start trying to make up our own ideas unless we're going to go and just do tons of more research like Jeff has. And, more power to Jeff. He knows about all that stuff, and that's cool. But for the average moviegoer or someone who is a better than average fan, but is not like a super fan, I'm just like, look, give me something. Give me something to work with here, And there isn't a whole lot to work with, especially with this new technology. It's like, give me some way to know, like show him going to a wormhole, and that way I can understand why he's there in like 5 seconds, something, do something. I like the idea of the character, but this is really also goes into the bad territory where he's just not consistent. I don't buy it. From a military standpoint, I understand what his mission is. Even if it's an honor mission, I understand what his mission is. His mission is to avenge this thing, and he's cleaning up the mess. But here's the thing. He's not just cleaning up aliens. He also dissolves the 2 people with holes in their chest. Why? Why does he care if they find human beings with holes in their chest?
Right.
And then, like Jeff said, and it was the exact point I was going to make, then he's taking trophies off the dead cop. Well, why do he do that? That makes no sense because he's not hiding anymore. And then at one point, he's just shooting random, so he goes from a very focused assassination mission to search and destroy mission. Well, at that point, when you're vastly outnumbered in your search and destroy mission, I don't care if you're the wolf, the bat predator, or whoever you are, you call him backup. You bring some people in because now he's sitting there, he's blowing up, energy stations and all this other stuff. So it's just nothing about his motivation seemed consistent through the whole movie.
Consistent, that's the word. That's the word.
Yeah. And then the other problem I had, this wasn't a problem. I think this was a missed opportunity. I love the fact that he could care less. And I have written characters like this in other contexts. I love this idea where there are fights between 2 different groups and human beings are in the middle and they're an annoyance. And I love that. And when he killed the girl by accident and all of us cheered, because she was gone. And then that dude comes charging at him with the M16. That was a wasted opportunity. They should have just had that cannon turn around and just blast the kid, and him just walk off because he's like, you're an annoyance. You're not even worth. Yeah.
Why wouldn't he kill him? Why wouldn't he just kill him? He's like the minute that we know that predators will go and attack anybody who's armed and presents a threat. Why not kill the kid?
Yeah. So it's like you're not even worth my time to even look at you. The gun is just going to turn around and blast you. That would have been like the perfect message for this predator to be like, you're like, bye, Felicia, get out of here. So and then
are we all wanting him to die?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the moments for me, there were a couple, and it was just I kept going back in this movie, and the Predator was the worst example of this. They kept doing it with the Predator, and 2 scenes in particular was they wanted to bring back nostalgia. And it's like, how many Predator movies do I have to see where the Predator gets wounded and then he's going to do some medical technology and heal himself? It's like every damn Predator movie now. The Predator's operating on himself. It's like, I get it already. They could do that. And it's the same thing with the mask. It's like, we want to see the Predator take the mask off, then bend over, and and it's like, so every movie, no matter what's going on, the Predator could be in a situation where if he takes the mask, he's going to die because of poison gas, but we got to see it because that's part of the movie. And I'm just like, that's just the way I feel. I'm just like, oh no, come on. It's like Gary Busey's going to show up in a second at this point. So.
Well, I was going to say, if you remember, the Predator in Predator 2 kind of did that with Gary Busey. He kind of saw Danny Glover coming in, and he had already set his cannon at Gary Busey, and he was like, he turned his back on him, and the shot fired and it hit him while he was jumping towards Danny Glover. But so once again, consistency was the word that jumps out at me the most at that, because we didn't see consistent motivations, we didn't see consistent responses. We didn't see consistent, like you said, he's on a mission. So you ought to be as covert as possible, since that is obviously what we think you're trying to do.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, when covert goes out the window, and I think given what's going on in the movie and the amount of aliens that are out there and everything, at some point, the whole thing, I mean, I'm going to use a military term for a sec. Everything goes tits up. All right. The whole mission goes tits up. At that point, when it's not covert anymore, even Bat Predator gets on the phone and calls the Bat family in. You know, it's like, come on down. We got a real big problem here. I can't handle it myself. You know, Batman would never say that. He'd be like, you know, this would be a good training exercise for all of you to come down or something. You know, but he put the call out there, and Dick and Dick would be there with Damien. They'd be like, yeah, he's in trouble. He needs our help. And, you know, and they're like, yeah, we'll go. And they'll show up and take care of it with him. But, you know, at some point when it all went south, you'd put the call out, you know, which is a whole other thing. So,
all right, now that's a good transition into our next subject, which is going to be these bland, no accent, no salt having ridiculously undimensional, they're not one dimension, they're undimensional human characters, to the point where I look up their names, and when I look up their names, I discovered most of their names have the same kind of ending. Like that Predator that goes, that you see his face in the window and he kills the dad. The mama is Kelly and the little girl is Molly. And then it's Kelly, Molly, and Ricky and Jesse. And Dallas. And Sheriff Morales, right. And I'm like, okay. So I'm looking at these characters, and as soon as I saw Died Ripley, I was like, oh, okay, whatever. Yeah, y'all have zero creative ideas. But I'm looking at these characters, and I'm like, this is why so many people struggle, because we use tropes in movies instead of characters. Instead of actually writing a character, we have the blonde girl. We have the friend-zoned dude that's just so in love with her, but of course she wants bad boy, so he's just hanging on. And you know, and he's a jerk about, and I'm like,
he's Johnny.
I don't want to wait. And so, and I'm like, really? And then, you know, when we look at the adults, I cannot speak from a military perspective, but I can speak from a common sense perspective. Adults in these kinds of situations never act like somebody would actually act if something like this would be going on. Because monsters could only realistically slaughter a small amount of people before there was a larger response. But a lot of that is because of the bias of today's technology, because it would be viral instantly if something like that happened. So that wasn't quite the case back here. So maybe I'll cut on that slack. But it's like what Nemesis talked about, and I said it last movie too. They pose like raptors. I mean, aliens don't hunt like that. They don't wait for a dramatic effect. And they don't wait for the best shot, and they don't wait to be silhouetted against, you know, a blood-lit moon, and then they strike. Aliens don't work that way at all. I'm like, did y'all watch the first two movies? And then, you know, so it's like, so when I'm looking at the human characters, I have to agree with Steve. I'm like, well, I'm kind of happy y'all is dead, to be honest with you, because you've been on my nerves. And what I want to bring out there before I throw it to you guys is, this is a very strong pet peeve of mine as a writer and as a fan, and here it is. It's when you don't give me anybody to root for. When, you know, I'm like, I cannot emotionally invest then in the story, or whatever you're calling it, because some of it is just a bunch of scenes strung together. But I don't have anybody to root for. I'm rooting for the monsters. I'm rooting for the shark. You know, I'm rooting for Freddy and Jason. I kill them all. You know, I'm just like, I just don't have anybody human to root for. You don't have any definition. You don't have any redeeming qualities. You're all kind of pathetic in your own way. And then, you know, the other thing, again, with the gross factor, but we're going to make that a separate discussion, because this movie went out of its way to be, you know, must have a thing against pregnant women and children, but we'll get there in a minute. But, you know, as I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, so what I would have done is I would have not tried to make an attempt at Ripley 2.0 or Hicks or anything like that, or another Sarah Connor wouldn't have been anything like that. What I would have done was done something unexpected like what they did in Galaxy Quest. I would have written a geek that expected it to happen. Nobody would have seen that coming. If you want to do something different, because Galaxy Quest, spoiler alert, you haven't seen that movie, but should have, because it's 700 years old. There would have to be people, like we talked about in the beginning, that watch the sky, that believe, because we know there are people like that believe in Area 51, that believe in aliens. Right. That's right. Conspiracy theorists. But there would have been somebody who, if they had gotten wind of this or been anywhere around this, they would have been ready. How do we know that's true? Because we actually have people that are ready for a zombie apocalypse. If the world went bad like that, we got plenty of people that got plenty of food and plenty of weapons, and they'd be fine. So that's what I mean when I say I would have had someone react like that. Like, I've got a bunker, I've got a basement, I've got ammo everywhere you can see, I've got food, I'm going to hole up somewhere and maybe pick them off or something like that. But somebody would have been smart enough I would have done something like that and had like a survivor, just so we just don't have continual red shirts, just over and over and over again, just, to give something more interesting and to have people react like they would really act. Because the first thing you want to do is assess the threat, assess your enemy. What angle are they coming at you from? Are they on the ground? Are they in the air? Can they leap? Are they jumping down? Because whatever you're doing, they might get them first to. And then you create a position that is your best defense against what you've seen them do so far. It wouldn't be a situation where you just stand on the side of your car door and wait till they slither up to you and just take you out. I'm like, no, real people wouldn't act like that. So I just can't find any redeeming qualities in the humans in this film, which is a shame. So let me hear your thoughts about, this is like, it's like Thanksgiving dinner with no salt, man. It's like, where's the salt? Ain't no seasoning. I got stuffing, I got turkey, it's just no seasoning. I don't so let me hear your thoughts on that. Start with Bracey.
Yeah, you really hit the nail on the head there. We needed, like, preppers, conspiracy theorists. We needed a Burt Gummer. That's who we really needed for this. That's the guy that nobody believes. He's Randy Quaid in Independence Day. He's the guy who's going to get motivated and get things going. Really should have had that guy, because I did not give a flip about any of these human characters. I think there's like the sheriff's name is Dallas, which I think is a nod back to the original Alien. And
yes,
here's another guy who's like he works a very humdrum kind of thing. He's a sheriff of a town where nothing happens, so he fails as leader. That was the only clever thing I thought. Every chance they tried to engender some sort of empathy for these characters always fell flat. The angsty teenagers had absolutely no chemistry. Watching Ricky chase Jesse is just like, no, there's nothing between the two of you.
Like, why don't you just name them Joey and Pacey and be done with it?
Yeah, like, why are you suddenly turning after this guy when you're the one who wanted to, date the bully who beats the crap out of anybody who looks at you sideways? So no, I don't buy that at all. Like, she'd be perfectly happy making fun of you when you deliver pizza along with all of her bro hunk buddies. That doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. The relationship between the two brothers, Eddie and Ricky, like that meant nothing. The estrangement of the daughter to her mom coming home, it didn't make any sense to me. He's like, okay, yeah, I understand, Dad's like, your tour duty might have been a year. But a year's not long enough for your kid to just kind of like, mommy doesn't really exist anymore. Not at the age that child's at. No. Especially not when the dad, Tim, is like, remember all those times you told me about how much you miss mommy? It's okay to tell her. And then that's never addressed. It never comes back around. It's kind of like our press secretary in the White House. I'm going to circle back around, but then you don't. That sort of thing happens. Yes, I totally went there.
Oh, no.
There's no reason to like any of these characters. They're stupid. Like, we throw a couple of stoners in there at one point just because we don't have enough cannon fodder. None of them are set up in a way, even though they I can't even say they try to do it, because like they just fail so hard at trying to get you to feel anything for these characters. Like, oh, I'm so sad, my daughter. Like, oh, my life sucks. I'm a teenager. I gotta wear the stupid hat at the pizza shop. That's the uniform. Oh man, I'm back from prison, but I'm actually kind of an okay guy. Hey, I'm the ineffectual sheriff. Like, oh, my husband disappeared in the woods. Oh, like I don't even care about you, and I just saw your husband get murdered. I don't care about even your boss who's trying to be nice. Like, hey, go home, get some rest. Don't care about him either, because I've got no connection. In 10 seconds of his screen time, I have no connection. And then you people aren't even smart enough to act like people. When the lady runs out in the street, instead of getting in her car after finding the lady she's about to pick up, exploded, she runs out in the street and just flagged down the sheriff. I guess maybe she was in her car on the way out of town. I don't know. I'm having to do the work of the movie again. There's this huge line of cars going out of town. We've got to evacuate town. Boom. Town's evacuated. Sheriff is going the wrong way with all these people back into town, and he looks at the successfully fleeing line of humanity as far as you can see in the frame out of town. It's like, we're not going to make it unless we have guns. They're doing a fine job. I mean, yeah, they're bumper to bumper, but they are moving in the right direction. You guys are going to go back into the meat grinder to get some guns, and you don't even know what you're dealing with. It's a much smarter move just to get the hell out of town. You know what? I would have even driven on both sides of the road, getting the hell out of town. Other people can get off the road like, where are these guys going? Like, you guys might want to turn around. No, I don't care about the human characters at all. It's like everybody else. You're just waiting for them to die. And the most insulting thing to me of the film, as much as I love so much of this film for all of its flaws and feet of clay and moles and warts and all that, the most insulting thing, like, you're willing to kill infants in a child in a hospital. Presumably, it might have been kind of like a Jones and the Cat moment, like from Alien. I don't know, because they didn't go there. They went there with everything else. But you definitely kill babies to term in the womb.
We're going to get there in a minute when we get to the growth section.
Yeah, you kill children, you kill women, you kill hobos, you kill everything. But then you don't kill the annoying little brother, either by the predator that he shoots at. That'd have been like Nemesis said, cannon just turns, no look, blast. Or when the pred alien stabs him with his tail. Now, I had the action figures for all these guys. You might get away with stabbing somebody with an alien tail because it's a longer, thinner blade. If you look at this thing, if you look at the stills of the costume, if you look at the action figure, this tail is like the size of my thigh. It's got this huge four-bladed projection on the end of it. That didn't just poke through his shoulder. That ripped off his shoulder. That goes through his collarbone. That goes through his brachial artery. That's taken out a couple of ribs, probably the top of his lung, maybe even his heart, definitely like the aorta artery, a whole bunch of things. That arm's going to fall off on the floor. And that asshole gets to make it through the whole movie. No. Screw you for killing everybody else, but not that guy. You even killed his stupid girlfriend in the most hilariously awesome way possible, and you didn't kill that guy immediately after. No, I hate you for that. Love the rest of this movie more or less, but I hate that.
Once again,
damn,
you get major.
You found the rock in my shoe. As far as this movie
you get major geek points just for having the action figures. I give you points on that. So that shows me your dedication to this film. So major points for that. Go ahead, Nemesis. The town full of red shirts.
Yeah, what am I gonna say? I mean, Jeff hit a lot of it really on the head. I mean, the most annoying character to me was the boyfriend, who is basically Johnny from the Karate Kid, showed up in Gunnison. It's the exact same character. The Ralph Macchio character with a little bit of an edge. I mean, we have scenes in here that do nothing, like the whole scene in the pizza parlor where his boss is telling him to do. I mean, it's like, why was that even in there? So that we could see that guy cowering later on. It's just, the whole thing was annoying. The female was annoying. The minute that she took her clothes off, I knew she was dead because we were doing slasher flick here. So I was like, yeah, you're dead, woman. You're not making it. You know, the minute you take your clothes off in a slasher flick, that's it. It's over. You're a dead woman. You're going to be dead.
Or if there's a pool, if there's a water scene, you're dead.
Yeah, someone's going to die in the pool. The minute you get to the pool, someone dying at the slasher flick. It's a rule. It's a trope. And that's exactly what we were talking about here. All these characters are tropes. You know, and then the way she died was so dumb blonde from the Friday the 13th movies. You know, I mean, it might as well had the predator throw a machete and pin her to the wall. I mean, that's basically what happened. So I mean, it was just ridiculous. And even the boyfriend, now suddenly he's the big man. He's going to avenge his not girlfriend. You know, she slept with the other guy like 5,000 times. They were out front of your house doing the wild thing, but you were so attached to her that now you're going to charge this predator who just pinned your girlfriend to the wall like a piñata, you know, and you're going to charge him. But, you know, I'm like, get out of here. Get bitch, please, you know, go away. You know, so that's just ridiculous.
He should have been thanking the predator.
Yeah. But the character I really want to talk about, and what was really annoying to me was the underpowered Mary Sue Ripley in this movie and the wannabe Newt. Wannabe Newt came within a whisker of saying there's no real monster, or they mostly come out at night. Mostly, I mean, she was like a whisker away from saying it at the end. I'm surprised they didn't go there.
Yeah, I thought it was going there too.
Yeah, and then Mary Sue Ripley. I mean, she's not a full Mary Sue because she's not like full, you know, uber powered, but she's damn close. You know, first of all, this woman really gets on my nerves, and here's the reason why. She comes back, she's got a pair of nods. All right, now if you've been in the military, you sneak a compass off base and bring it home with you. The MPs are showing up at your house, and you're going to jail. I mean, they think compasses are secret weapon things. You bring night vision off the base. Yeah, you're hosed. You are screwed. You know, there's no way in hell. She's bringing this home, and then she gives them to her daughter, you know, and it was just so blatantly transparent why they get. And so it's just right there. I'm just like, oh, this is ridiculous. Then I want to know what this woman's MOS is, because first she had access to nods, okay, and then she brought them home. I'm like, okay. Then she's using a carbine. You know, it was either an M4 or an M16A2, and she's a crack shot. I'm like, what the hell? It's like this woman is firing from the hip and just taking things out at 50 yards like it's no big deal. And once again, we had the never-ending vial. We had the never-ending, you know, but this is a lot of movies do this. We had the never-ending magazine. I don't remember if it was 20 or 30 round magazines they had in those weapons, but no one changed the magazine ever. And at one point, I saw somebody fire off like 150 rounds out of the never-ending magazine. I was like, where in the hell is this ammunition coming from? So that's all going on. But the one that really got me, I'm like, okay, she's a good shot. She comes from Gunnison in the rural town. Okay, maybe I'll give that to you. She stole the nods. Yeah, I don't buy it. The MPs are showing up tomorrow, but by that time it's too late, you know. But I'm like, okay, I'll let it slide. But then she gets in and she's flying a Huey, a UH-1 from Vietnam. Like, who the hell is she? Murdoch too from the A-Team? Like, what is going on here? How is this woman? She knows her way around the APC as well. Yeah, and she could drive the APC. I mean, granted, I will say that driving military vehicles is not super difficult, but it's also not plug and play, you know. But flying a helicopter, that is a very specific skill set. It is not easy. And she just jumps in and she's flying a Huey. Why? Because she was in the military? Where the hell what did I miss? I missed you know.
G.I. Joe team member.
She was Ripley and Vasquez kind of rolled into one. That was the thing.
It's like, what class did I miss when I was in the Army? Because no one ever taught me how to fly a helicopter. I'd love to be able to fly a helicopter, but
you say that.
They said
about like when I was in, like you would sometimes you get offered a chance to train up for rank. And so like, hey, we need somebody to fill this niche. So you go off to school and like you get a new MOS or something. But I was sitting there like Nemesis, like, how many MOSs has she gone through, man? She knows everything.
Yeah. And my job was to shoot down helicopters. So I know a lot about helicopters. I know how they move and everything else. But it's like nobody ever came to me and said, hey, Nemesis, now that you're done shooting down helicopters, why don't you come on over here and learn how to fly a helicopter, and then we'll give you spec ops training as well. So, Mary Sue Ripley and Wannabe Newt really got on my nerves there. So
yeah, with a lot of Vasquez dialed in to Ripley as well. Yeah, and again, no originality. Go ahead, Steve. Red Shirt Town.
Red Shirt Town. Yeah, I will say that I had the similar feeling about the nods. I wasn't 100% sure, but it's like I spent enough time, around people who've been in the military. Like, yeah, they would not bring home something like that. That didn't seem right to me. But I will say, in overall quality, it's just really amazing how over the last few films there is such a downward arc in the quality of human characters from the beginning. Like we get Alien 1 where, they may not have been perfect, but at least you had Ripley and you had Tom Skerritt and you had some other guys. And then you get Aliens where you get probably the best cast we've seen so far. And then every single film has been worse and worse and worse. And like last film was pretty bad in that, they were all forgettable. This one took a downward turn from there and went into, they were all irritating and annoying, and I was happy to watch them get slaughtered by the monsters. Within 15 minutes, it's like, no, I don't like any of these characters. None of their arcs make any sense to me. Just go and kill them now, and I'm just gonna to have my fun watching them all die. That's where I was like 15 minutes into the movie. And it's because especially the main characters. Okay, you have like the Diet Winchesters, the two brothers that are completely a waste of time. And half the time, and so you have the older brother. It's like, okay, he's hanging around with the sheriff. Why is he hanging around with the sheriff? Why is the sheriff confiding in an ex-con? Can you mind telling me that? The sheriff goes and talks to this guy, and he'll confide to him things that he wouldn't confide in the victim's wife. Like the victim's wife, he wouldn't tell that the victim had died, but he's going to tell this ex-con for reasons that are never explained. Like, show me something to establish why they would have this kind of relationship where he's willing to confide secrets that probably are not even legal to speak out in public. So from there, I knew that the sheriff was a complete joke. And then he got even more stupid later on. It's suicidally stupid. Especially with this whole thing. Yeah, we're going to listen to the colonel and we're going to drive right in the middle of town. We're going to completely trust this guy. And no, he's not going to stab us in the back and try to get us all killed. We'll go ahead and go with that. He was a terrible leader from the beginning. There were just points where it's like, okay, why is the sheriff going without a partner? You would think that investigating out in these dark places, you would have backup. And not like this ex-con, like real backup, somebody who's like actually a cop and who's trained.
Yeah,
no,
not an unarmed civilian.
Yeah, and it's not even a matter of do they have these people out there? Do they have enough people? We've seen that they were able to get a pretty big manhunt out there at one point. And then the next day, it's like, okay, it's just going to be me. I'm not bringing any backup. None of those guys that were last night, we're going to bring him. So yeah, this sheriff and frankly, all these deputies were extremely stupid, and it's like, okay, we're just waiting for them, to be slaughtered. I couldn't stand the kid brother, the not quite Sam Winchester character. This guy who was really just absolutely annoying from the first scene he was in. Oh yeah, well, I'm not going to go and put my hat on for this job that I'm making perfectly good money doing. It's like, okay, you're going to fire me. Okay, I'll take the pizza there down there. Good God, this guy was so irritating, and that was the starting point. And then you find out it's because he's obsessed with this stupid girl and her stupid boyfriend, who this woman was stringing them both along, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm just like, wow, this woman is not worth going down into the sewers to get your keys over. Go and be a man. Take your brother as backup if you have to, but be a man. Go in there and get it straight. So that even made it worse when it's like, okay, we're going to try to show what a man he really is at the end with a machine gun. No, this is stupid and contrived. It makes absolutely no sense. We've already established he's a freaking coward, and we haven't seen that. We haven't seen that he's earned any of it later on. Fighting these things. It's just absolutely a joke. Everybody else is just completely worthless. I mean, you got all these other kids that are completely stupid and completely, there just to be killed. I'll kind of defer to you guys as far as like Ripley and Newt. Yeah, I kind of got that vibe too. There were definitely moments where they were like, repeating, lines, subtly from previous films. They even actually ripped off Terminator 2 with, we're not going to make it, are we? And I'm like, yes, because it's in your nature to destroy yourself. I'm just like, oh my god, these characters are insufferable. And so when the blonde woman gets killed, by the time the blonde woman gets killed, I'm just like, thank you for taking that. He was awful, and I was just disappointed that he didn't kill the brother a minute later. I was just like, why did you kill him? You had no reason not to kill him. We want to see him die. He is annoying. Kill him. No. He survives until the end. Of course, I think he's dead anyway, but we're going to get into that when we talk about the ending. No, more than likely. So yes, every single character is terrible. I will say though, there was one other missed opportunity, and that was with the bums in the sewer. You could have had some really good tense moments out with the aliens in the sewers, and we never got a single one. When they were out there getting the keys, this would have been the time to have an alien go and attack them. But instead, all we get is this moment where they turn in the light on them, and it's like, oh, I don't know what that is. It's an alien. It's obvious that it's an alien. Why aren't you running from this thing? No, or doing something. No, it's obvious that's an alien, but no, we don't. It's a complete wasted opportunity. The bums are completely wasted. The dog down there is completely wasted. That could have been, as much as I don't like seeing dogs get killed, at least you could have had another dog alien with that. That's completely wasted as well. Just so anything that wasn't wasted, it was a waste of space and should have been killed long before and wasn't. I hated every single one of them. The only character I had any attachment to whatsoever was the Predator. That is how bad this cast was.
The only other thing I'll add is you hit on it a little bit when the sheriff, they drive in the middle of town, and that lady, she turns to the sergeant or the Mary Sue Ripley, and who's telling them no, we shouldn't listen to them, and goes, well, the government wouldn't lie to us, and I was like, full stop.
I laughed. I was laughing. I laughed and laughed. I even posted the Jonah Jameson meme when I talked about that because it was ridiculous. And even all the characters in there are looking like, are you out of your freaking mind? Nobody in the story believes this nonsense. Yeah, it's ridiculous. And then what ends up happening, the government absolutely betrays them and tries to have him killed. Ridiculous.
I got whiplash from that one. It was so bad. I was like, what did
There's so many unintentional funny moments in this movie, and it's because of the characters being stupid.
So we've got Mary Sue Vasquez Ripley. We got 25% Newt. We got Sheriff Dewey from Scream. We got Joey Dawson and Pacey. And then we've got Joss Whedon blonde, because that's what she was.
Yeah.
She's a blonde that's written by Whedon, and she died like that too. I'm like, how is it we don't like none of y'all? We don't even remember your names. But okay. All right, so let's move on to the next part that I'm going to block out of my mind as we talk about it because I'm hungry. I don't want to think about it, but we got to talk about it covering this film. And that is that the sheer amount of gore and violence done against children and pregnant women and babies in this film, I can't really wrap my head around it because it doesn't serve a purpose narratively. It seems like it's just there to be gross or sadistic. And I'm like, okay, if you're going to have any type of monster film, and I literally mean any type, I mean from The Invisible Man to a Godzilla versus Kong to a Mothra, you name it, Jason, Freddy, anything. The one thing you want to do is learn something new about the monster. You want to see something that you haven't seen before. Now, Jeff rightly pointed out in terms of the Predator and its weapons, and in terms of things we haven't seen before, like the double shoulder cannon and all that, we did get at least an incremental change in that area. But what makes it interesting is that there were actually more layers to the creature than you presupposed. And then it surprises you with some behavior that you didn't see coming. So we want to learn something new. But here, it's like you had what could have been a really good idea, and Jeff's postulate about it being an alien king could have actually gone somewhere had that been written well. But instead, this thing seems to have, or this movie seems to have a penchant for kids and pregnant women and babies. And I'm like, narratively, why? Okay, we already know what these things are. We already know what they'll do. It's just gore for gore's sake. And I was just really grossed out, which is why I never watched the film again, review stuff, aside or whatever. But I'm like, I don't want to see that. I just really don't. So if ever it's on TV or anything, I'll watch the early scenes with the mafia predator and the blue liquid. And then I pretty much just turn to something else because I'm like, I don't want to see that. So I want to know like what your response was to the, first scene we got a facehugger with the kid. I was like, okay, that kind of set a tone. But then we have the pregnant woman, and then we have the scene in the maternity ward, which this thing has super bursters because all it has to do is infect you. And 5 minutes later, somehow human babies have turned alien. But really? No, don't need to see that like ever again in this life or the next. So I was just like grossed out. And so if I wasn't already out of the film, that pushed me back so far till I was like, nope. So I want to hear your thoughts on that level of what I consider to be absolutely unnecessary gore. You first, Nemesis.
Yeah, this was hard for me. Well, like I said, like it's already been mentioned, but I'm going to be kind of serious here for a second. I do write horror. I write some very disturbing things. The thing with the babies and the nursery, and that it was fascinated with them, I was horrified, but I kind of liked it. And then I liked the idea, and they left it alone, and it was just established something very visceral and made me angry, and it was disturbing. And I never saw what happened to those infants in the nursery. Okay. But then the thing with the pregnant lady, first of all, they gave us another thing brand new with the alien biology, where it was like pumping something into this pregnant woman. I'm like, what the hell is going on? I mean, I said this jokingly, but it was like tentacles or something. It was like something tentacle something. I'm not going to put the last word, but from Japan. It was like disturbing on that level. Watching that, and then the aliens come out of this woman, and I'm like, well, what the hell did I just watch? I actually said that. That's when I turned the movie, I flipped around, and the universe didn't want me to keep watching the movie because I spilled my coffee over my entire keyboard and almost shorted my keyboard out. I mean, that's how bad it was. I was like, I got to walk away. And I say all that, I'm going to do a shameless plug in here. I got a book coming out next month, The Long Game. But in there, I have scenes in there where there are rapes and physical assaults, and a girl is abused. And I hint around it, and I show you the after effects of the attack in one instance. But I debated whether or not I should write the attack in all its graphic detail, and I said no. I said no because anything I do is going to be gratuitous, and what you can make up in your own mind is 10 times worse than anything I could put on the page. And I think that's exactly what's going on here. It's like, you did not need to show us. When you just showed him that predalien going to the nursery, that was disturbing enough that if you had cut it off there, and just hinted that the babies got killed, I'd have been like, that's effed up. That really makes me hate the predalien and root for the predator even more. And I would have been fine with it. But then you had to go the next step and just try and shock me with horror. It's human centipede type stuff. It's like, I didn't need to see that. I didn't need to see it. It didn't add anything to it. And all it did was make me not want to see it ever again, because what my mind could come up with, what happened to those babies, is bad enough. And it's like, and it's playing on my own fears. I mean, Hitchcock was a master at this, of showing you a little bit and letting you fill in the rest, and when you do stuff like that, to me, that's you thinking that you're cleverer than you are. And you're just trying to shock people and give them some cheap horror, some cheap value, some cheap horror tricks or whatever. And it cheapens the movie as far as I'm concerned.
Well, it's funny you should mention that because, I got a lot of flack from some people about, my novel, which turned into a series because I wrote about how the war in heaven got started and how Lucifer becomes a devil. And part of it is there's a scripture where Jesus says he was a murderer from the beginning. That struck me.
Hmm.
I was like, a murderer from the beginning. So who did he kill? So there's this whole fascination that they have with death, and it's new to angels. And so I did a lot with the idea, but everything that I did was scriptural. But to me, it's contextual because we're talking about the war in heaven, and we're talking about the devil, and we're talking about heaven and hell. We're talking about the extremes of anything beyond anything we could imagine. So I thought all that stuff, kind of stuff, was fair game because it makes sense to me to show a progression. It's like an Anakin Skywalker thing. You once were on the light side, then you turn dark-sided. Why? So that's kind of, so to me, like, if the statement is made you were a murderer, then we need to know why you did that. So I'm just saying that to say in that kind of context, I feel like that kind of progression is justified because you're going from something to something, and it makes sense for the character. This kind of just, graphic horrificness to me is not justified from any angle. Not from a story angle, not from a mythology angle, not just no angle does this work for me. So I was just like, okay.
I think the word we're looking for is gratuitous.
Yeah.
Okay, gratuitous gore. Okay. So go ahead, Steve. What do you think about just the sheer disgusting gore?
Yeah, gratuitous is the best word for it. I feel like they, on the one hand, it's like, okay, we've seen kids be used in these movies before, but they were used better. They were used for a purpose, and they were not used like this. And to keep in mind, like, okay, I don't necessarily write things that are that horrific, but at least I understand why, a certain amount of blood and gore and all that is necessary. I mean, this is horror. We expect a certain amount of this. I think that they crossed the line, and with this, Newt, originally when they brought her in, yeah, we fear for her more because she's a child, but there was also a purpose that she served. She was somebody who was the surrogate daughter to Ripley, who had lost a child, and that whole arc was about them finding each other. About Ripley finding a purpose and something new to protect, and so threatening Newt made sense because Ripley is confronting her fear of losing her daughter, her second daughter, the way that she lost her first one. Okay, so there's a logical reason to put the child in jeopardy in that movie, and it was done better, both with the Alien Queen and the trap that was set by Burke. But there was never anything where we saw Newt actually be hurt on a deep level that she couldn't come back from. We never saw any of that. We never saw that she was threatened unnecessarily. There was always a reason behind it. There was always a narrative purpose behind it and a character purpose behind it. And so, you kind of understand that. With this movie, it's like there is no reason whatsoever why they're doing this to the little girl early on, except that, oh yeah, she's obviously got the binoculars that can see these things. So obviously, because we have set up this chalk-up gun, we have to have her see something. And so we have to threaten her. Okay, for what reason? Why her? Why this house? Why? What is the character reason behind this? We just don't see anything because we don't care about this child, and we don't care about the mother either. So there is no reasonable threat. So it's just basically threatening her because she's a child and because it causes a reaction in us. When we see a child threatened, that's it. And it gets even worse when you talk about the hospital scene. There was no reason to have any of this happen. There was no reason why they had to have this in a hospital. None at all. Except, the minute that they start showing all these babies there, and you start seeing that the pred alien is there, you immediately know that these kids are dead. There is no way that they could survive this. There's nothing that shows how the pred alien might be driven off or any reason why it wouldn't come for these babies. So I have to assume, even if we don't necessarily see the gore and carnage, my immediate thought is these kids are dead. They have massacred these babies, and for what reason? What does it serve? What character purpose does it serve? None. It's purely for shock, purely 100% gratuitous for shock, and for no other reason. And I hated it, absolutely hated it. And then they took it a step further by going in and threatening these pregnant mothers, which we do see the alien attack, and then we saw the whole business with the tentacles. I don't even want to talk about that, for the reasons that Nemesis already talked about. I mean, it's clear that the alien is just having its way with all of these helpless victims in the hospital, and nothing is caused by it. Nothing. There's no story purpose behind it. There's no reason why the alien couldn't have threatened someone else or some other place or anything. It is just because it hits that primal reaction of women and children getting assaulted by this horrible thing and being repulsed by it. And that's the reaction that I have. It was taken out of the movie because I'm sickened. I'm disgusted watching this. This is completely beyond what I expect, even from a horror movie. That is how bad this is. And I just don't see any reason why this had to be in the movie. You could have, like many things in this movie, it could have been replaced with anything and it would have worked the same. So yeah, absolutely unnecessary, absolutely disgusting. I don't know why this is here.
I agree with all those words. Sickened, disgusting, gratuitous. I agree with all that. Let me say this before I throw it to Bracey, because I want to give Jeff a chance to address what I'm about to say. And that's this. Another thing that I don't know if it was intentional or unintentional, but it seems like there's conflicting motivations between the species. If you go back, you remember that we saw the dog alien was the only alien we've ever seen actually eat people, because that dog alien ate quite a few people and we saw it. But that's the only time we ever saw them using us like directly for food. So we have a species who's programmed to hunt for sport and who has some level of honor in that hunt, combined with a species that is aggressive but is mainly driven to reproduce. So maybe they were trying to show the reproduction thing. I don't know. It was just really, really disgusting. But I felt like I didn't understand in combining the two species what the thing's motivation is. So maybe you can do all these new things or whatever, but I'm like, is it trying to reproduce like aliens do? Or is it hunt for sport like predators do? Or like what is the deal? So Bracey, take it from there and give me your feedback on the gore, but also the thoughts of the combination species motivations.
You know, I never thought about that before. I want to address that point first.
Okay.
I think you've actually hit on a very interesting idea. That this was the first species that the Yachua, which is what they call them in the comics and the novels and things, the predators, this might have been the species that they developed their whole hunting culture around. Because we see how the aliens multiply prolifically. So in order to halt this plague of locusts, you need somebody to keep them in check. I like to think that this is that whole Darwinian balance and counterbalance of nature on a cosmic scale. That's kind of a fun idea. Now, allow me to blow your minds. This is what I've been weighing on. It's been really interesting watching each of you talk about this, because each of you did not see what I saw. And I will tell you, in fact, that the gore was not only not gratuitous, but necessary. And particularly the hospital scenes.
I'm all ears.
All right. First, one thing that I love seeing for the first time ever in one of these films is when Dad shoots a facehugger leaping at him and his kid, that the acid eats clean through his arm and his arm falls off. One thing has always bothered me from the second movie on is anytime somebody gets hit with acid, they might die, they might not die. When we saw just a few drops of acid in the first movie sizzle through 3 steel decks, why is it not going clean through people? Why are they not losing limbs, heads, stuff like that? They should have smoking holes in their chests, all that kind of thing. Not just like, oh, Hicks, you're looking kind of rough there. He's got to be way on like the misty side of that splash. not to have like his entire head just eaten away. So I was glad to see that happen for a change. Second, I have stated this movie is the anti-AVP movie. What do we do to assert that? That movie was PG-13. We go ahead and set the tone on this with an R. And I go beyond my friends because in my DVD collection, I have the uncut, unrated version of this film. Yes, indeed. So what do? We establish the killing of the kids. Now, I was rooting for the kid to get out of there. I always do. But if you're going to kill the kid, I'm like, kill the kid. So I actually appreciate movies that go there because that is a trope on the positive end. We usually save the kids. We will kill the women and, we'll kill the women, we'll kill the men, but usually the kid gets to get away. But, Guillermo del Toro did it in Mimic. He, wiped out a couple of kids in a subway. John Gulager did it with a Feast. They or whoever wrote that, he directed it. They killed the protagonist kid in that film. Like the whole meaning of all this stuff that she's doing to survive, including letting her boss bang her twice a night. All this is just for her kid because she's a single mom, and then they take out the kid. As oh, that is brutal, but I kind of appreciate that. That's like the Whedon, has to kill somebody taken to the nth degree in a fashion. And unlike you, Nemesis, I don't just write horror, I draw it. So sometimes I like to see the visceral horror. I understand the whole premise of the Jaws, the thing is scary when you don't see it, but sometimes it's also really excellent when you do see it. In that case, I point to movies like the opening scene of Jeepers Creepers 2, which you have the creeper out in the broad daylight, and also the excellent Korean monster film Host, where a major attack happens in broad daylight and you get to see everything. Sometimes it's really worth it to have that visceral visual impact. Now, here's why I have to get into the biology of this creature a little bit, and we can go back and discuss some of the costume issues later as well. But I want to get into this because I don't want to take too much time on this. So my thesis about this thing being an alien king. Now, this does mean that we didn't need a facehugger to start with, because this thing can generate its own progeny. This is why I think it's a king. Note that every male in the film, the father and the son, the bums, several other male characters, they're attacked by facehuggers. The one time an alien tries to go after the female bum in the sewer, the pred alien decks him, asserting dominance, and then he leans in on her. And we keep seeing what's he doing? What's he doing? What's he doing? He leans on her. He leans on the lady at the cafe. And then we finally get the answer, even though later on we would see the exploded stomachs. We're not getting the whole picture here. How are they propagating so quickly? We never see a queen. We never see eggs. It's the pred alien. He only brought down a few facehuggers. We never see them egg morphing anybody. And alien, we know, is a metaphor for rape. I mean, the original alien had a very penis-shaped head. The facehugger rapes you orally to implant its pregnancy in you. It's like the life cycle of the tarantula hawk wasp. So what does this thing do? It grabs you with its face, and it's the face mandibles can actually make a little bit more sense here. And I wish they'd been designed a little bit differently so they would come around like this instead of doing the regular predator thing, because I like the idea of them actually grabbing the face. It shoots its pharyngeal jaw down your throat, and as we see, it starts pumping something in there. It's pumping embryos into them. So it keeps attacking women to impregnate them. Notice, it kills men. It lets the aliens face hug the men, but it goes after the women specifically. It is impregnating them. It is an alien king. It has dominance over the drones. And so we further get that. We see that something's going down her throat, and then this is why we don't need a queen hive, because this thing can supplant multiple embryos inside, and it seems to require the womb structure to really make this work, because it understands the difference between male and female of our species. And then they just erupt in not a single chest sucker, or chest burster, but a mass of them coming out. This is why the town got overrun so quickly. And this is why I say this creature is not just a pred alien, but it is an alien king. It has the massive crest. It has the dominance. And it doesn't lay eggs, which is a very female-centric thing to do in biology. It impregnates. And that's why all of that was necessary.
I think I need to take a shower now.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it works on a biological level, but in terms of like story and character, no. Nothing.
I still say, like, if you didn't have that, you guys would be wondering, like, so why is he always biting women in the face?
Now,
Why would they always say
I give you points
You
on
need
that
to see it.
explanation because I do think if your theory that it's a king is true, then it has seed and not eggs. So I'll give you points for the theory, but we still did need to see all that we saw.
I
and
don't
it's
think you
still-
put it together without the visual.
I think though, my thought is that if you're going to do that, if that is what you're aiming for, and I see what you're saying, and I'll give you points for it making sense, you know, whether it was intended or not, it's like, as a filmmaker, you got to do a heck of a lot better job showing me what is going on and explaining what's going on, because just from a moviegoer perspective, it looks like you just wanted to show something being shoved down this pregnant woman's throat and all the other
Yeah.
stuff.
No, I
mean,
totally
still
get
do
it. I
need to
totally
see
get
the
that this is not going to be to everybody's taste. And again,
Yeah.
it's probably only my super nerdism that allowed me to put all that together, because I even told you in the press releases, the special effects people were saying that the Pred alien was a queen. And I emailed them and I said, no, guys, you've actually created the first on-screen alien king. And they were like, crap, I think you're right, man.
Yeah,
Like,
but
I mean-
but that means they didn't know what they was doing.
with this very
I mean-
same argument that I just presented to all of you.
I mean, and I will say that there are times when the unspeakable or unwatchable thing is appropriate to have on the screen.
Mhm.
When you see it and it just shocks the conscience so much, or shocks the reader or whatever. I definitely agree that there are times to do that. I just disagree with you on this one. I
also think we didn't see the infants attack. I think that was once again a nod, because there are nods in this movie to previous movies. That was the Jones and the cat carrier moment.
but-
I mean,
Well,
we
I'll
definitely
tell
make
you-
the inference that all these babies are slaughtered. But I
but
think it was
seeing
very
the-
purposeful that they didn't show like somebody passing by and seeing a nursery full of blood or something like that.
But seeing the embryo xenomorphs come out of a pregnant woman's stomach tells me that fetus that was there is dead.
Yeah,
and
it's
the pregnant
consumed.
woman is dead, and yeah, it's just.
Well, see, here's one scene, because it's not, again, Bracey, it's not that I don't understand what you're saying.
Right.
It's not that I don't think it's a well-made argument, but the times when I'm able to make that argument myself is in movies like Amistad, or TV stories like Roots, when you see slaves stacked on one another, because that's what happened, like sardines, and when you see slaves trying to jump off a ship and would rather drown, and when you see anything having to do with slave trade, just the sheer brutality of the transport alone. If I see something like that depicted on film, because it's a historical event, even though it's a very horrific one, I can pretty much justify that in my mind because it happened, and it's probably actually worse than they're able to show on film. That's pretty much the only time in my mind where something gets ugly like that, and seeing it is kind of a more of a reality check and a slap in the face. I've even heard Bishop Jake say he went somewhere that was a mainstay of slavery, and he said the stench of the slave ships are still in the land. So if you go there, you can smell it, and that just blew my mind. So
Yeah, I think
that's about
this is
the
where
only time in
you
a
and
story
I
where I can follow that level of visceral disgust. But and like I said, it's what you say all the time. You got to work so hard to put all that together, and if the movie is about an alien king, the movie should have made it clear in some other way that there was something different and all different kinds of stuff. You have to work so hard to make all that work.
I didn't actually have to work that hard. I picked all that up out of the context on the first viewing, even though that wasn't the intention of the filmmakers apparently. But that just shows like a difference of perspective or a difference of taste. Like for instance, like scenes like that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, this is why I don't like slasher movies so much, because I don't like to see a human being doing horrible things to another human being, because that is real and that's visceral and that occurs. Whereas I see something fantastical like this, I can compartmentalize that to the point where it doesn't bother me because this is a scenario that will never happen. And I guess I can just view it in a different manner than most people do.
I think the last thing I would say is from an artistic standpoint, whatever it is you're going to do, I mean, I guess you could do almost anything. But with whatever you do, you are creating a bill for yourself as the artist, as the writer, as the whatever, the screenwriter.
Sure, this is all part of your brand.
Yeah, well, and it's a bill, and you've got to, and that bill is going to come due at the end of the story. So if you don't pay off that bill, and this is a big old matzo ball hanging out there. You just took on a huge debt with this seed. So okay, if that's what you're going to do, then you better damn well pay it off, because you just asked us to watch this, and this is not to you. I'm talking about to the movie maker and to the for the average person watching it and everything. It's like if you're going to take on that debt, that emotional debt, if you're going to write that rape scene, if you're going to write whatever it is, then you better pay it off, because if not, then you're in debt to your viewer, to your reader, and it usually doesn't work out well. So
no, and you're right. This is a movie that requires some catharsis, just like Alien 3 did. With like here we see a level of escalation going on throughout the film, and then we don't get an equal level of payoff. Well, now we all agree this film is flawed in many, many ways. But as you guys are tearing it down, I'm going after the things that I actually, for lack of a better word, appreciate about the film.
Well,
I totally understand where you're coming from.
We're all bummed now because we're so grossed out. So we're going to move on. But I will say this before we get off the subject. And the last thing we're going to talk about is the actual ending of the film. I will say this. This is where my survivalist / nerd character would come in, because when Nemesis said, talking about setting up the debt and setting up the payoff, that's absolutely 100% true. That's spot on, straight down the middle. It's one of the staples of storytelling. If we had survivalist guy say just a few lines, that's how they're spreading so fast.
Yeah.
Somebody says, "What do you mean?" Said, "That thing is not a queen. That's a king." If he just said that, then, I still wouldn't have agreed with all that other stuff, but we wouldn't have to work as hard. We wouldn't have to, take, super nerd pathways to get to the point why that's happening. And what you said would have made more sense of why it was acting the way it was acting, and maybe why the predators were so afraid of it. It could have tied up a little loose ends. Very rarely do I see situations where just a few lines couldn't have tweaked it into something much better. So based on your very excellent argument, if someone had acknowledged that in the film, and that's why it was behaving differently, and that's why all these things were happening, and that thing, they could have compared it to a rooster, or they could have compared it to the male dragon in Rain of Fire. It's like, that's why you see what I'm saying?
They needed an expert on that character, on these species, to be able to
Right.
say that. So they needed that character introduced, and there wasn't one.
Right. We need a Brent Spiner. We need a Jeff Goldblum. We need anybody Joss Whedon writes. We need that guy. But okay, we'll move on because we all have to take a shower now. So we'll go through the final ending of the film.
I'm bathing in the gore.
Yeah.
As opposed to Super Bracey, who's in his element. So the final ending of the film is supposed to be a fight between the two, and they both get mortally wounded. And then, of course, we finally come in with the scorched earth policy, which is the same thing they did at the end of the first Avengers, except Iron Man stopped it. And of course, that's what's going to happen. And the government will lie to you and everybody. I mean, we all knew as soon as we saw the evacuations, I'm like, this town is toast with it. Y'all better. You couldn't fly out of there. You could fly like Kal-El. You couldn't get out of there fast enough because you are going to be a ball of dirt on the map in about 10 more minutes. Like no one will ever know there was a town there is what's about to happen. So we all saw that coming. But the final fight between the two, once again, I have to say, I know they mortally wounded each other, but it doesn't make any sense at the front of the film to say that this thing that is literally less than an hour old and it's gone from, Captain Wormface to a 9-foot tall, Predalien king. is going toe to toe with one super cleaner mafia predator, and they're kind of holding their own. That should have been like Drago and Apollo. Like, I'm in the ring with you, but it's obvious from the beginning that this is not a match, but that's not quite what happened. And then the whole thing was lit so darkly. I know Jeff says that was, a good thing in terms of the cinematography and taking chances artistically. But I was like, you can't see what's happening. I'm like, if you're going to have a monster versus film, we at least want to see the monsters in the verses. But, it was just so dark. And I was like, what just happened? Just what, and the power balance made no sense to me, based on everything we've seen up to that point. I was like, yeah, okay. And then at the very end, we got Todd Ripley waking up, and they're surrounded. I'm sorry, she would have got shot. I was kind of hoping she would have got shot. They could have shot you, but nothing about the ending of the film left me with anything I would want to retain. I didn't have any hope. I didn't want to see a sequel. I still hadn't found anyone I was rooting for. Whatever it was I learned about the creatures, it was gone, and it didn't feel significant enough for me to want to revisit the film. And I was like, see, this is where I have to chime in on what Nemesis said, and that is, you've at least got to do a good job at storytelling, even if we don't like the story. It's like a well-cooked dish of food that you don't like. If it's food you don't like to eat, but it's a chef's strong suit, you can at least acknowledge, that they make that dish really, really well. It's just not for me. But you at least have to make the dish well and say that, it's just not something I enjoy, but I can acknowledge that is awesome. But this film had the opposite effect. I'm like, you didn't make the dish well. You didn't tell the story well. You didn't give me anything by the end of the film that would make me want to visit the story world again. And that's your job as a writer and a director and an editor. You need to make me want to come back to this world again for some reason. And there was, let me take my glove off, this many. Goose egg, zero, zilch, nada, bupkis. I would ever want to see any of this again, like ever. And I was like, the only thing I want to see is Alien versus Predator high school. They go to the high school and they just kill all y'all. Alien versus Predator Riverdale. I watched that one. They did kill all y'all. I might watch that one. But other than that, I'm like, and I don't like coming off of my entertainment and I got to take 14 showers. I'm like, there's real life I got to do with real life, and here's my escapism. That's disgusting. Okay, well, let me get some bleach, and let me get some soap, and I'm gonna eat some spaghetti, I'm gonna be all right. So I just at the end of it, I was just like, I really need that time machine, man. We need to invent a get my movie time machine back. Because the four of us, we can do it. When we get to the end of the movie and we're just shaking our head, we're like, boop. I ain't watching that no more, and I got my 2 hours back. Okay, so let me hear your thoughts about the ending, everything that happens with the ending, from the final fight to the Scorchers to the, Vasquez Ripley surviving, all that. Start with Nemesis.
Yeah, the final fight was a fight. I mean, yeah, there was some stuff there. Once again, his motivations didn't make any sense to me. As this predator alien is that much stronger than him physically, why is he going hand to hand with it? Find some sort of weapon, do something. I don't know. It was cool to watch. I enjoyed it, what I could see of it. I did think it was a little dark for me as well, but that's neither here nor there. The dude, the guy that we all hate, the younger brother with the pistol firing at the end, I'm like, get out of here. First of all, that he's conscious to fire that pistol was ridiculous in and of itself. And then I didn't buy it. I didn't buy her flying away in the helicopter. I didn't buy them surviving the helicopter crash, because it seems pretty obvious that was not a Moab. That was not a fuel air explosive. That was a nuke. That was a full-on nuke they dropped on that town, which means those people in that, first of all, no special forces are going near there without having some level of mop gear on, because, protective gear. Mm-hmm. And those people are dead. They're dead. But, okay, let's assume they survived. Yeah, they're going to be in the same cell as the survivor from the Antarctic thing that happened a couple days earlier. They're going to be on the same black site, so they're never seeing the light of day again. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing I'll say is then the people who make this movie decide to be edgy and throw out a name at the end and tell us that Mutani was the one, Miss Mutani was the one. And I'm like, look, this is when I wanted to sit down with the directors and be like, look at my eye. You can't do this at the end. It's like, if you wanted an expert character who is in the government, who's tracking all this stuff and is giving us some backstory to set up a franchise, that should have gone at the beginning. Then we could have hated Mutani. That's the person we would love to hate, and you set up a whole arc. But now you're just throwing this out there because you're trying to butter up to us. I was like, nope,
right,
sorry.
Right.
It's over.
They're trying to suck up when it's too late, throwing in Mutani, and all of a sudden we're supposed to be interested, and that's the final thing.
Yeah, it's over, Johnny. It's over. It's over.
If you drop a bomb so big that the roaches ain't going to survive, the people can't either. I'm just saying. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, this is absolutely ridiculous. I will say that Yutani should have been the character that they brought in for exposition about what the Alien King was. Okay, if they had done that, that would have made sense, and that would have connected to the lore, and it would have brought everything together in a way that would have been at least a little bit more satisfying than what we got. So yeah, that would have been the time to bring her in. Instead, they decided to use her to tease a movie that everyone knows will never, ever happen. Read my lips. Never happen. This movie was that much of a bomb that we will never see this, follow up on ever. Okay. So this character is wasted. I might have wanted to know more about her. I was curious about her. That's about one of the few things I was curious about was Yutani. But no. We only get her for a scene and nothing's explained about her either. Okay, I guess she's, a part of some, the company, one of the companies interested in the aliens. Okay, fine. But establish what her connection is and why this colonel is reporting to her. Is she a defense contractor? Is she a public official of some kind? Is she like a secretary or a cabinet official? I mean, because honestly, if you're going to get a nuclear strike, authorized on an American city, I would think the president would have to approve that. I don't know. Maybe somebody knows more than I do, but I would presume that the president would have to approve that.
That's right.
And this is never brought up. So, who is she that she has that kind of pull? I would have liked to have known that. We never find this out.
Yeah, a nuclear bomb falling on continental U.S. might be in the news as well. So just maybe.
I would think.
I
would think so. Yeah, I would.
That was terrorists.
This movie picks up
the spin
at the end of last movie, which establishes that Weyland and Yutani are in the same time frame.
Right.
So Weyland dies.
They haven't merged yet. Yeah.
Right, they haven't merged yet. Right. So, but Weyland dies in that movie, so his company goes on, I guess his name goes on, and then we get this nod at Yutani. And remember how I talked about a better movie there? At some point, it's what Steve said, we're going to never see it. But at some point, if we saw the merger movie, if we saw the thing that brings this giant conglomerate together and it's corporate greed at a new level, it's just a room full of Burks, and they're talking about all the things that could be done. Because now we know that they know about predators and xenomorphs.
I don't want to take a super long time because we're running long and we need to get to Jeff. But all your ideas, if we had gotten Mutani at the beginning, established here as a bad guy, if we had gotten the conspiracy theorists talking about how he's monitoring stuff, he monitored the satellite and Weyland, communications, he broke into Weyland and Weyland companies going down there. Suddenly, we do have a franchise started. We have a universe started. So
yeah, and there's some pretty good stuff, but I'm going to have to. I want to kind of get a couple of things out before we go to Jeff. And one of them is that definitely all these characters are dead. It's like there would have been a crash because nobody would be able to see because the nuclear strike would have blinded them. Probably they would have gotten cataracts and not even be able to see. They would not have been able to have a reasonable landing probably after that first blinding flash, which we saw. We saw that they were close enough to it to have that flash. So yeah, these guys are not seeing. They are crashing. How did they land reasonably? Yeah, and I also have to go along with what Nemesis said. There is no way in the world that I buy, these troops going out there without radiation suits or something to protect themselves from what they knew would have been radioactive. They knew it in advance. It's not that they didn't know it and they were surprised by this. They should have been informed. Yeah, maybe you ought to go out there and put on your hazmat suits, because we're expecting high levels of radiation within the next 24 hours. Something like that. They would have known. There is no way in the world that they would have gone out without any protection whatsoever. And on top of that, like these survivors of this, which there shouldn't have been any, but if there had been survivors, yeah, these guys have severe radiation poisoning and they're not surviving the rest of the day. They probably would have gotten severe rads from all of that, and who knows what level they would have gotten them at. I would imagine if they hadn't gotten severe radiation burns, they certainly would all have been radioactive to the point where they probably have severe cancer and things like this and losing hair. There is no way that they come out looking Hollywood clean, looking like that. No way in the world that close to a nuclear strike. I do not buy it. And another thing that was really stupid, before I give this to Jeff, is okay, they're sitting there waiting down on the platform to take off on the helicopter, while not Dean Winchester goes off and does whatever it is he's doing. I do not buy that they would have sat there and waited for him to come back. They should have left at that point, especially since we got an alien like the next second, hitting the windshield. Assuming, even if I buy the bit about this woman being able to fly, the helicopter, which I'm going to defer to Nemesis on that. I assume he knows this. Okay, I'm going to defer to him on that. But even if he's wrong somehow, which I don't believe, but even if he was wrong, there is no way they would be sitting on the platform waiting for not Dean to show up. They would be leaving.
Not with her daughter in the back.
You're just warn your brother later. We're getting out of here. There is no way that they would have stayed in that position. Everything about this is ridiculous. And on top of that, we don't even get a resolution of the alien Predator versus Pred alien fight. And the Predator never even gets a victory. They just both get atomized just to get rid of them. I didn't like that either. I wish that this Predator had survived rather than killing them like they do in every single one. I mean, it's just so boring and repetitive. Nothing was there. What a waste. This ending was not well thought out at all.
I was like, did y'all not see Terminator 2? Didn't you see Sarah Connor's nuclear dream? Then you see her holding on to the fence and then she's just skull and bones. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I'll tell you, like, they don't have to worry about being in the black site very long because they're not going to live that long. They have soaked up some major rads. It's over. It's a done deal. Maybe if they're lucky, they'll just grow a couple extra eyes and arms or something weird. Yeah, the whole ending is pretty ridiculous as far as all that goes. Helicopters are not known for like their crash safety gear. Everybody is mincemeat in that thing. They're just pulped. But let's get back into the fun stuff because I like to talk about the fun stuff instead of all the stuff that we hate about this movie. All right. Actually, I like the end fight better than a number of the other fights. A lot of the indoor fights, especially once they got into like the hardware store area, and I didn't like the stuff in there because that's where it really got too dark for me to see. I could handle a lot what was going on in the sewer between the Predator and the aliens. I could handle a lot of stuff that was going on in the power plant. But man, the inside of like the school and beyond until they got into the hospital and started to get a little bit better lit was just a murky mess. And like I said, I read that the director wanted to go in the opposite direction of the previous film, and I respect that. But he went too far. We need to be able to see some of the action and enjoy it. I will give him really good points on filming all of this with it looked like almost entirely practical effects. Tom Woodruff Jr. played all of the aliens, including the Pred alien. Todd Woodruff Jr. is 6'2". Ian White, who played the Predators in the last movie, reprised the role as the Wolf in this movie. He's 7'1". Nemesis, this is one of the reasons the costume did look restrictive because this was a really big costume to make Woodruff look bigger than White. As a matter of fact, in these scenes where they're fighting on the rooftop, Woodruff is actually standing on like a 3-foot platform so that he can appear to loom over the Predator when they're fighting. And they had to shoot in certain angles and certain cuts because if you see any of the behind the scenes, the long body shots, he's built like a prison guy. You know, like he's got this huge upper body, and then you see Woodruff-sized legs on this thing. You know, they're not in the proper proportion at all because he's got to look so much bigger than the actual incredibly large-sized human in the costume that he's dealing with. So there's that. And taking that into consideration, I thought they were very clever with a lot of those shots. I actually thought a lot of the shots for the aliens were very clever, considering they basically just had just Woodruff in a costume most of the time. You'll notice a lot of the shots you don't really see full body aliens most of the time together in the same scene. Sometimes it's just like Alec Guinness working one as a robot, or he's got his arm in a sleeve, you know, and they're interacting like that. So they did some really clever editing, some clever shots to make Woodruff look like he's in a dozen places at once, as the aliens are like swarming the civilians in the middle of the thing, and interacting with both the predator and the pred alien, as well as the drone alien. So I gotta give them props on that for making do with what was probably a lower budget, but being really creative about it. And if you're going to use darkness, this is another reason why it helps hide the fact that you are dealing with a lower budget. Just a couple scenes I thought were too murky. Overall, I did like this fight. I thought there was a good reason for the pred alien to kind of go at him handsy, because in the course of this fight, he has been losing his kit. He's lost his shoulder cannons. He's lost his converted cannon into a pistol. He's ended up throwing away his shuriken. You know, he's down to like his whip and his claws and his combi stick, and eventually like the whip and the combi stick gets knocked away. So then he's got to go mano a mano. He probably knows he's going to go off, and that's probably why he takes off the face. There's no reason to take off the faceplate other than to just be cool for the movie, or like to be kind of macho. But like, this Predator isn't really about the macho. He's supposed to be about like, you know, doing the job. So I totally agree on that. I do kind of like the way that he, even being physically overpowered, he at least pulled off a draw, because he is so over muscled by this thing. It's like the pred alien fighting the predator is a lot like a human fighting a predator. You know, like there's just no way you can really take it on. Whereas like we had demonstrated with Schwarzenegger punching one out and it's just getting the crap kicked out of him. But I still had to hand it to him for like doing some major damage when all he had is his claws, you know, pulling out the inner jaw, you know, spiking him up through the brain. And then like in retaliation, this thing pins him through the chest. So in my estimation, the wolf actually ended up winning, even if he died at the same time. You know, when you're fighting an unequal opponent and you can do that much damage, you're still the winner. One other thing I liked about this, I didn't think to mention before, because we were talking about things we hadn't seen before, and I'll make this brief as well. We actually, because one of our problems was with the last film, we didn't like that we weren't really seeing the aliens and the predators do some hunting and stalking tactics. Now, this is something else that we see from the aliens in this film. The pred alien is actually showing off his intelligence, and to a slighter effect, we see this from the drones as well, because they're following his lead. When the predator fights in the sewers down below, the pred alien just doesn't charge out like a big dumb monster. He's actually lurking below the water to jump up and smack him while he's engaged. He'll do this a number of times through the film. He'll take advantage of his surroundings to get the drop on the predator like a good ambush monster would. I love the sort of the recreation from the Predator movie, where like the predator's walking on the logs and Arnold's like clinging to the bottom. So what we get here, we get a predator walking across the catwalk, and he's being stalked by the pred alien down below the catwalk. He's climbing on like a spider, taking advantage of his environment to nullify his range advantage with his plasma casters and things like that. Even calling in at one point, when he gets in a little bit of trouble, he even like calls in a drone who like catches the wolf predator on the side to take him out of the picture, and then like he ends up going down the elevator shaft and things like that. It was nice to see these things. I think this director really saw this stuff as like, I want to do better in this last movie. Here's all the stuff I didn't like. He put all that stuff in there, but we can all agree he didn't mix the ingredients well. He had the ingredients for something cool. He didn't mix them well, and you guys are so spot on. I did think it was a great little teaser to see Yutani, because we never see Yutani. And to my mind, with Bishop being dead, Bishop Wayland, This is where Utani aggressively merges the two companies, but it would have been really great to see that from the beginning, and then we could have had that follow through. That could have been a through line for the whole film, and then we might have actually gotten the next film to really see how this comes about.
Well, the look on Utani's face felt like, to me, it was a Sarah Connor backstory where she knew about these things before anybody else and nobody believed her. So she either formed her company or she took over another company because she said, since nobody believes me, I'm going to be the first to commercialize, capitalize, monetize these things. And that's already an interesting story. Already interesting, but like Steve said, we're never going to see it. All right. We're going to call it there because we've definitely gone long, but we took a deep dive in all these things. And again, I have to give Jeff major points for, I think his arguments are very, very solid. I don't agree with all of them, but I think they're well put together. But the thing about it is, and see, I can admit my bias because this is the way I am about Batman. I completely admit bat privilege, and I understand why it makes people mad because Batman should not be beating Darkseid. I love him, but no, I get why that angers people. I just don't care. So I could definitely understand where Jeff is. Oh Lord, did we lose him? So I can definitely understand where Jeff is coming from when you have something that you love, or it just ticks off to all the right boxes for you. And so I definitely get it. This was just not my cup of tea. And like I said, for me, the measure is always repeat playability. Do I want to watch it again? Whatever, watch it again? No. Just no. Just nope. Nope.
The Bat Predator got Jeff.
Is he all the way going? What happened? Did he just drop?
Yeah, he dropped. I don't know. The Bat Predator got him. There he is. Hey, man.
There we go.
You got away from the Predator.
The iPad finally died on me.
Okay. So I want to thank my co-host for this thorough discussion. If you are a fan of this movie or if you're disgusted by this movie, we still love to hear what you have to say. So come find us on Twitter, give some feedback, leave us some comments below this YouTube video. We'd definitely like to hear from you, and definitely take a chance to check out the other shows we have on United Capes Podcast Network. So thank you so much, Nemesis.
No problem. And click like and subscribe to the channel down below. I spent $3.99 on this movie so I could talk about it with all of you. So give us some love. So
thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you. I think Nemesis sacrificed himself for our sins. We appreciate it. But I would also say, this is definitely one of those examples where, even if we don't agree on anything, we're all still friends and we all understand where each other come from, and we can all have a reasonable civil discussion about it. And I can definitely see where Jeff is coming from, even if there are points that I have issues with. So this is the kind of discussions that every so often it's nice to have.
And this is always how the geek community was, folks. Okay, all that other stuff, those are people from outside. This is always how we were. We can disagree or agree vehemently, passionately, and lay out our points. And we would all go out for a slice right now. I wish these dudes were in Chicago. We all go out right now and have the pizza. But anyway, thank you so much, Jeff. Everything you said was extremely well presented. So if I had
thank you.
I'd give it to you.
Thanks. I appreciate that. You have a bias for Batman. The Alien franchise in particular is even with all the bad movies that are in the franchise, there's something that just I'm constantly drawn to the idea of this creature. So I dive into it deeper than probably damn near anybody else on the planet. So I have my own bias, and knowing that I was going to enjoy this film more than the rest of you tonight, I really leaned heavily into it, and it was nice to actually have argument, counter argument, and as opposed to us often sounding kind of like we're all in the same mind. And I appreciated the chance to argue back and forth with you guys for a change. And hey, Twitter, this is how you do it without having to cancel anybody.
You took the words out of my mouth, folks. And on that note, thank you again for tuning in. And we will see you next time on the next episode of Sloppy Spoilers.